Shalom and welcome to another Chamor podcast from abedan, teaching Noahide Judaism for Messianic Hebrews. Messianic Hebrews being the broadest possible term you can use to refer to all people who believe that Jesus of Nazareth is the Messiah, whether you're Muslim, Christian, or Messianic Jew. And if you are Messianic Jew, you should stop calling yourself Jews, because Jesus put the scribes and the Pharisees in the authority when he said the scribes and the Pharisees sit in the seat of Moses. So do and observe absolutely everything whatsoever they tell you to do, not what any other person who calls themselves Jews tell you to do, only what they tell you to do. And they will not identify any Messianic Jews as Jews, meaning that anybody who calls himself a Jew without the authority of the scribes and the Pharisees is saying that they are Jew when they are not, and that means that they are a synagogue of Satan. So don't do that. As for the rest of you who believe that Jesus of Nazareth is Messiah, God bless you. Just for the Messianic Jews, they should stop that and start calling themselves just simply Messianic Hebrews. And don't try to dictate what Messianic Hebrews believe, because Messianic Hebrews is a broad term. What you really have to do is teach Noahide Judaism. And I teach it for Messianic Hebrews, so that's what this channel is about. Now, we're going to be looking at this book today, Laws of the Ger Toshav, the Gentile who rejects idolatry. It's got a different name on Amazon. It's called the Laws of the Ger Toshav, Pious of the Nations. It's by Rabbi David Katz. It's based on the teachings of Harav Hagaon Aharon Soloveitchik and Chafetz Chaim and Lubavitcher Rebbe and many more. So he also bases some things on Rambam, that's not allowed. And also neither is Lubavitcher Rebbe. So there are some problems, but Soloveitchik is all right. So this book, just so you know, it's got lots of letters of sort of approval at the beginning. Actually, it's 2 letters at least of approval at the beginning before it goes in. It's got a table of contents, forward a statement of objective. Then it says, Od Israel Yosef ben Chai, summary and conclusion, Rabbi Nachman Eliezer Rabinovich, the Shut Siach Nachum, a halakhic view of the non-Jew, and conclusion, and then afterwards an appendix, and Ger F frequently asked questions, elucidation of terms, lexicon of terms, rabbinic sources that validate Ger Toshav Bizman Hazeh in the current age, in the current time, and select Ger Toshav sources from the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Breura, and the Biur Halacha, and Harav Hagaon Chaim Kanievsky, Shlita Shonei Halachot, Shabbos 304, from Ritva commentary to Tractate Makot 9a, Chafetz Chaim Book of Mitzvot, Positive Mitzvah 61, Sicha of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Chelek 31 Parshas Mishpatim, according to the Rogachova Gaon, and Pachad Yitzhak Harav Yitzhak Hutner. And then it has, last part would be the Avoda Breura and the mitzvah to make gerim. Okay, so that's basically the outline of what's in the book. I'm going to start reading a little bit of it for you. We'll look at some of the laws as we go through this book. So I'm just doing a review. I'm critical of this because I have heard lots of negative things about what Rabbi David Katz has done, but I'm also sort of happy that somebody has tried. There are lots of people who've tried. I think the good thing about it right away is that he's using the biblical term Ger Toshav. If he had used the term Noahide, which is the modern translation, then people would probably be not so concerned, but because he uses Ger Toshav, and not everybody realizes that the Bnei Noach, the Noahides, are the Ger Toshav, even in Judaism, because they're not focused on things which are relevant to non-Jews. They're only mostly very insular, focused on things which only pertain for Jews. And so they don't all realize the Ger Toshav is Noahide. So I think that's one of the objections. But the other objection is that most of them are Rambamists, and Rambam says that it doesn't apply until the Messiah comes. Now, for Messianic Noahides, of course, for Messianic Hebrews, you believe, of course, that the Messiah has come, and that's Jesus of Nazareth. Therefore, there's every reason to be a Ger Toshav. Only if you follow Rambam saying that no, there's going to be no Ger Toshav until the Messiah comes, then you can say, well, okay, then nobody can be a Ger Toshav. But since you are all Messianic, then you absolutely should be focused on that. So he's got the forward here, the Noahide and the Ger Toshav. It says Ger Toshav is a universally accepted Torah concept that exists today and spans the entire Masorah. And I just have to say, back in 2006, 2005, 2006, when I was arguing that Ger Toshav is a universally accepted Torah concept, it was very difficult to find people who would agree. They say, no, it's Noahide, B'nai Noach, B'nai Noach. And then I had to prove it with verses from the Torah and say, look, the term here is Ger Toshav. It's the same thing. And, oh, yeah. But people are very, very shy when you come forward and start saying things like that. So I'm very proud of Rabbi Katz here for actually, making it clear that is the universally accepted Torah concept. It's just if you haven't heard about it, it's because you don't know Torah. That's all there is to it. So it's true. This is universally accepted Torah concept that exists today and spans the entire Masorah. A Noahide is a follower of the 7 laws of Noah, while a Ger Toshav is the distinction given to one who has formally accepted Kabbalah, that is, accepted Kabbalah upon oneself, the 7 laws. So there's differences that there are people out there who keep the 7 laws without knowing about Judaism. And a Ger Toshav is what we call a believing Noahide, is somebody who accepts the 7 laws formally upon themselves, specifically because they are what Judaism teaches to be the laws of Noah. So he carries on. He says, all Gerei Toshav are Noahides, but not all Noahides are Gerei Toshav. That's true. One must pay special attention to the terminologies. They are not dogmatic, and context will determine the meaning. He says, the rabbis have established a vernacular for the non-Jew in Torah, and each term may carry several connotations. Careful study is a prerequisite when studying the non-Jew in Torah. Case in point, a Noahide may imply an adherent to the 7 laws of Noah. That would be just a simple ger, not a ger toshav, or it can mean a religious non-Jew. Or a ger toshav in text may refer to a resident alien, that is the ger toshav, at a time of jubilee, or it can mean someone today who has rejected idolatry properly. Knowing the terminologies and Torah discussions of this subject matter will give a deeper understanding to the non-Jew in Torah. I think they complicate the matter. It's very simple. Ger, the biblical term, the Torah term ger, really should be translated as Noahide. And because Noahide gives you the full context of what that means. And when we say Ger Toshav, or Ger Asher B'Sha'arech, Ger Hashar, Ger Hashar, or sometimes just Ger Sha'ar, refers to a believing Noahide. The difference between a Noahide and a believing Noahide being somebody who keeps the 7 laws versus somebody who believes in Judaism and understands that all they have to do is observe the 7 laws. It's quite useful. This show is quite useful for people who are interested in the relationship between Islam and Noahide Judaism, because you might see in this book some of the references to laws and think, oh, that's an Islamic law. But of course, you have to remember that these laws came first. Islam came later. So it's really like the Sharia of Noah is not what we're talking about here. And there are several books which talk about the Sharia of Noah. There's the Brit Shalom, which is another one I've looked at on this show beforehand, which also makes some mistakes. But we've got to be critical about the people who are writing these things, because these people are in the current generation, which is really the worst of all generations of Judaism so far, and is only slightly better than the next generation. So we've got to be aware of that. And the best person to really consult would be the person who is talking about the laws for the Noahide in the 1st century, for example. If there was somebody writing about the laws of Noahide in the 1st century, i.e., for example, the book of Acts, chapter 15, then that would be like the holiest level, the highest level. The earlier it is, the more holy it is. The more recent it is, the less holy it is, the more likely it is to be astray, have gone astray. Anyway, let's carry on reading. So he says, knowing the terminologies of Torah, discussion of this subject matter will give a deeper understanding to the non-Jew in Torah. Every sect of Torah Judaism and selected sages of Israel have written about the Ger Toshav, and in particular its relevance today. Torah luminaries spanning from the Lubavitch Rebbe, who I would say we have to be careful of, because, of course, the Perishim understand that he has a cherem against him. That is meaning he's not to be observed or listened to as a teacher. and that cherem comes to him from Rabbi Shach, for example, who is a leader of the Perishim in Jerusalem. Perishim meaning Pharisees, of course, scribes and the Pharisees. You understand, Perishim is the correct Hebrew term for the Pharisees. So obviously this man doesn't care about what the Perishim have got to say, so therefore we can't take what he's got to say as the gospel truth, but we can still refer to it as a possible guideline. Now he says the Chafetz Chaim, the Rebbe, not just Lubavitcher Rebbe, he says, but also the Chafetz Chaim, Rebbe Nachman, the Gaon of Vilna, Rabbi Aharon Soloveitchik, and he has mentioned some Perishim here, and many more have written about the Ger Toshav that was brought down in Chazal and elucidated by the Rishonim. So he makes reference to Perishim, but he doesn't care what the Perishim have got to say. And that's the reason why you may find something useful in this book, because he makes reference to the Perishim, but also we have to be careful because this is a translation in his own particular personal view, and he really doesn't care about the fact that there's a harem against the Lubavitcher Rebbe, for example, from the Perishim, so which means that he is not Perish himself. So even though he's giving us some information from the Perishim, he's not Perish himself, and therefore, so mistruths can slip in. We have to be very careful about those mistruths which slip in. But nevertheless, let's carry on reading and see what else he's got to say. As we all know, he says, the sages of Israel have been known to disagree on certain matters, but the Ger Toshav has a unanimous standing among all sages. There's universal agreement about the fundamentals of Ger Toshav and its status for today in particular. We have all been told at one point in the time that the Ger Toshav does not exist today. The truth of the matter is that this is only half true. I disagree. He has been told. He says we have all been told at one point in time. That's not true. There are plenty of rabbis who disagree. But he comes from a school or a milieu where he has heard that that's what everybody says, that Ger Toshav does exist today. And I think that's a basically means that he comes from the Rambamists sort of milieu. And if he was in the more the Perush, sort of the Pharisee milieu, then he wouldn't have said, we've all been told this. What he would have said is that we all know that Rambam said this, and many people regard Rambam as authoritative on every matter. So we've all come across Jews who say that. It would probably be the correct way to say it, but that's not what he says. He said, we've all been told this, rather than we've all come across Jews who believe this, which is a different thing. However, we have to remember that those Jews who believe that are, again, not the scribes and the Pharisees, so we don't care what they believe. The truth of the matter is that this is only half true. There are some types of Ger Toshav that in fact do exist today, i.e. those not connected to the Jubilee year. However, when one fully looks into the subject matter of Ger Toshav, one will soon realize that the writings of the sages are unified and that the Ger Toshav, non-Jubilee Ger Toshav, is a real person as represented through halacha for today's Torah world. And remember, even those who are the Jubilee Toshavim, since we're talking about Messianic Hebrews here, who are interested in Noahide Judaism, Messianics do believe that the Messiah has come, and so we're kind of living in the Jubilee, like a permanent sort of Jubilee concept. Therefore, even a Jubilee Toshav is also relevant. But he's trying to distinguish, he's trying to defend Rambam's position that, there's that the Ger Toshav cannot exist. That means a believing Noahide cannot exist unless the Jubilee is in place. And so he's trying to sort of say, well, okay, but there are other types of Ger Toshav which could exist. There are other kinds of believing Noahides which exist. And I would say we don't have to listen to Rambam's opinion on this at all whatsoever. It's got nothing to do with Messianic position. Noahide Judaism is real. Noahide Judaism should be observed. And God will decide whether you are a Ger Toshav or not. It's not something which Rambam can decide for you. Certainly not. And those people who follow Rambam say, no, he's the authority, are Rambamists, remember. They're not Pharisees. We couldn't even necessarily call them Jews, except Rambamist Jews, perhaps. They're not really following Judaism. They're following one very specific, narrow opinion, which has been tolerated in Judaism for a long, long time. And because it's been so tolerated for such a long time, has bigged itself up to the point that people think it's serious, but it's not that serious, really. Especially the internet has contributed to the idea that Rambam's opinion is sacrosanct. But that's not really the case. Also, you get a lot of academics pushing the idea that this is sacrosanct, but that's really not been the case. Rambam has a cherem against him. We have to remember that. He was accused of, and he was guilty of kitzutz netiyot, and some people argue that he repented of disbelief in the Kabbalah on his deathbed, but do we really have proof of this? Who knows? It's just basically some people defending him because he was so well respected by non-Jews that it was difficult for Jews to dismiss the only Jew that non-Jews thought was so important, and so Jews eventually came around to accepting Rambam's opinions, which is really wrong. That was actually not correct. It doesn't matter what non-Jews thought about Rambam. He was outside the folds in Judaism, and there's no reason to just rehabilitate him just because the non-Jews think he's so great and always making reference to him. But that's what's happened, and that's the reality of the situation, so we don't care. Anyway, he continues, one practical example in halakha is the non-Jew who has accepted the 7 laws of Noah. He is removed from being a Shabbos goy. And the whole concept there being a Shabbos goy in the first place is pretty repugnant. The idea is that, yes, a Noahide can rest on the Sabbath. So can animals, and you and your sons and daughters, all of the people who are part of Israel and friends of Israel can rest on the Sabbath. But the Goyim don't get the blessing of the Sabbath. And from this idea comes Goyim, meaning the non-holy nations. They don't get the blessing of the Sabbath. Only the holy nations, i.e. the Goyim who surround the kingdom of priests, the Memlechet Kohanim, they get the blessing of Sabbath, as long as they don't observe Sabbath the same way as a Jew does. But the Sabbath goy is an idea that, well, what if we need somebody to do some work for us on Sabbath? Can we employ somebody to do some work from us on that Sabbath if they're not part of the friends of Israel? If they're like enemies of Israel, can we employ enemies of Israel to do work for us on Sabbath? And some people got the idea, yes, you can employ enemies of Israel to do work for you on Sabbath, and that would be the Shabbos goy. Oh, wow. That's a whole topic in its own right. We should probably be steering very, very well clear of that. It's basically trying to get an excuse. So can I have slaves working for me on Saturdays, even though I'm having a rest, as long as they're non-believers? Yes, that's what God created non-believers for. Well, this kind of way of thinking is very, very Rambamist. Again, it's a problem. So I disagree with that. But he's saying here very clearly that there is a distinction. He is removed. The Noahide is removed from being able to be a Shabbos goy. You cannot have a Noahide as a Shabbos goy. You have to have a non-believer as a Shabbos goy. The distinction between Ger Toshav and Noahide carries heavy consequences. A Noahide, he got this wrong. He says that Noahide remains a Shabbos goy. That means you can have a decent person who observes the 7 laws of Noah but doesn't believe in Judaism, and that person can be a Shabbos goy. But once you've become a Ger Toshav, you can no longer be a Shabbos goy because you believe in Judaism. And one of the commandments in Judaism, 10 commandments, is you shall observe the Sabbath. You can keep holy the Sabbath day, even if you're a Noahide. That specifically says, even the Ger who is Asher B'She'arech, even the Noahide who is within your cities. So, or your jurisdiction, under your jurisdiction, for example. This is why a Ger Toshav cannot be considered a Shabbos goy. But it's pretty disgusting, really. Rabbi Katz believes in the concept of a Shabbos goy. Well, that shouldn't even be a matter. You shouldn't have such a concept of Shabbos goy. You should have set things up properly so you can enjoy Sabbath without having to rely on somebody else to do the work for you. Not really a good idea. No. So he says a Noahide can remain a Shabbos goy, but a Ger Toshav can't. Meaning, although he says earlier, this is lack of thought here. Although he says earlier on the previous point, on the previous page, when he said all Gerei Toshavim are Noahides, but not all Noahides are Ger Toshav, and now he says a Noahide can be a Shabbos goy. He should have distinguished and say all other Noahides except for a Ger Toshav can be a Shabbos goy. He should have rephrased it like that. So there's some problems with his phraseology. He hasn't phrased it correctly by saying a Noahide remains a Shabbos goy while a Ger Toshav doesn't mean, well, that means that a Ger Toshav is not a Noahide, right? That's in contradiction to what you just said previously. So he hasn't thought it very clearly. He hasn't thought it through very well. What he means is this kind of Noahide cannot be a Shabbos Goy, and another kind of Noahide can be a Shabbos Goy, but only, of course, if you believe in Shabbos Goy possibility in the first place, which is something which is rather repugnant and should be left behind. So he continues, the distinction between the two comes down to whether or not one has fully rejected idolatry, shituf, on the Torah level, and this alone can make one into a Ger Toshav today, which is why what I teach is miaphysitism, or rather than diaphysitism. I say we can't have a diaphysite position. It has to be a miaphysite way, because if we have a diaphysite way, then there is kind of shituf, and if you are practicing shituf, you can't be a Ger Toshav. I will agree with that. So that's fine. That's true. So you can still be a Noahide. Shituf is permitted to Noahides who don't practice or don't believe in Judaism. But as for those Noahides who do believe in Judaism, you can't be diaphysite. You have to be miaphysite. Or monophysite. You can't be a diaphysite. So you have to keep well clear of shituf, for example. That's the key problem here. Okay, now let's just have a look and make sure everything is recording. I think looking at something and getting an indication there might be something wrong. I don't know what that could be. Let me just have a look and see and make sure that everything is still working properly before I continue too much. It looks like everything is okay. Not sure why I'm getting an indication that things are not okay. Let's see if there's anybody out there live right now. There's nobody watching it live. No, it seems like everything's fine. Okay. Don't know why I was getting an indication. Sorry for the interruption. Let's carry on. Okay, so carrying on. So he said that the distinction between the two comes down to whether or not one has fully rejected idolatry, shituf, on the Torah level. And this alone can make one a Ger Toshav of today. Ger Toshav of today can be best summarized with a verse in Parshas Re'eh in 14:21. It says, give the nevela, the non-kosher meat, to the ger in your gates, or sell it to the nachri. This mitzvah, and the nachri he translates here as Gentile, which is also the same way I would agree. Nachrim are not Noahides. Gerim are. This mitzvah, that can even be performed today, demands that one can successfully identify the difference between a nachri and a Ger Toshav in your gates. The nachri is a goy, akum, and the ger in your gates is a Ger Toshav, through a personal acceptance of the 7 laws of Noah. This insight is enough to encourage any reader to look further into the subject matter. Absolutely agree with him here. Even one with marginal interest will see the beauty and unity of the Torah, of the Ger Toshav of Moses, as expressed through the generations of the sages of Israel, Rabbi Katz, as written in Modi'in in Israel. And that's his introduction to the topic. So, so far so good. Let's carry on reading. So then he goes through his statement of objective. When a rabbi in Israel writes a response to a question dealing with our responsibilities to a non-Jew, all of the background material we have discussed is taken for granted. Without it, one cannot begin to understand what the response is all about. For centuries, we were besieged and beleaguered, hounded and persecuted. Every diabolical stratagem was applied to destroy the spirit and body of those who remained loyal. And yet we survived, not as might be expected, embittered and hardened beyond the capacity for humane feeling and compassion. Not so. Our fathers who suffered in the ghettos of the Middle Ages and the Pale of Russia, and our brothers who in our own day felt the satanic fury of the accursed Nazism, were not brutalized by the enormity of their suffering. The more they suffered, the deeper did Jews penetrate to the meaning of the halakha about man, and the more truly did their day-to-day practice reflect the highest response to God's imperative. Compassion and mercy for all men are the mark of a Jew, just as they are of God. As Rabbi Akiva said, beloved is man, for he was created in the image of God. Beloved is Israel, for they are called children of God. This is from Rabbi Nachum Eliezer Rabinovich. Then he continues, our objective, so that was all Rabbi Nachum Eliezer Rabinovich. Now, Katz continues, our objective is to bring out the Ger Toshav Sugya for the reasons stated by Rabbi Rabinovich. Our message is in contrast to the other Noahide organizations whose well-intentioned initiative is to conceal the Ger Toshav Sugya. The entire Torah of the non-Jew is contained within the Ger Toshav Sugya, the Ger in your gates of the Chumash. This is what I was writing in 2006. The main body of this work is comprised of two books. Rabbi Aharon Soloveitchik's Ode Israel, Yosef Ben Chai, and Rabbi Nachum Eliezer Rabinovich's Halacha, Teachings and Responsa. Also included are teachings of other rabbinic authorities on Ger Toshav, including the Lubavitcher Rebbe, we can ignore, the Chofetz Chaim, the Brisker Rav, and others, along with interpretive elucidation as an aid to studying the Ger Toshav Sugya as it exists today. Rabbi Katz presents the sources and various opinions regarding the contemporary status of Ger Toshav. The halakhic conclusions derived from this discussion should be decided by one's competent Rav and Posek, says Rabbi Zev Leff, who has written this statement of objective for the book. Now, I just have to also point out here that he has got some letters here now published, one from Rabbi Zev Leff, who was just given the forward here, and another one from the congregation of Beit Solomon Ahavas Achim in New North Jersey Avenue in Chicago, Illinois, signed by Rabbi Moshe Soloveitchik. And we should be cautious, I think, about when we see books which have got letters at the beginning of condoning or approving of this book. I approve of this book, or I approve of this person's mission, because they could have written this about a mission. It goes into a book, and then later the person can go astray. What's really important is not whether there are any letters of approval. What's really important is whether you're in good standing still with the Jewish community. That's the important thing. Whether the Jews are still listening to you, talking to you, and accepting what you've got to say, or whether they have left you behind. That's more important than a letter, because otherwise people will say, well, look, they had a letter at the beginning when they published this book. They must have been there. It stands for all time. It doesn't stand for all time. It totally depends on whether the person is still in good standing. Good standing is all that matters, and that's all we focus on. So he says, in excerpts and elucidations from Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik's Ode Israel Yosef Ben Chai. The following is an adaptation of Rabbi David Katz's translation of Rabbi Aharon Soloveitchik's Ode Israel Yosef Ben Chai. It starts here with, I guess, point number one. Point number one. The Goyim in our times are generally categorized in Torah as, we are to help them and do not hurt them. This obligates us to save them and to give them sustenance, and they have the status of Ger Toshav in some respects, but they are not complete Gerei Toshav, which exists only in the times of when the Jubilee year is operative, when they are to accept upon themselves, that is Kabbalah, their Noahide obligation before three Israelites, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded in the Torah, as explained by the Rambam in Hilchot Melachim, chapter 8. So in other words, he's saying we can't consider them total Noahides or because Rambam said so. This is, again, appealing to the authority of Rambam is a bad thing to do. It's a bad idea. You can't do that. So this is Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik's position, and we have to say, okay, we know that you're a Rambamist, but that you're supposed to be rehabilitating him, not appealing to his authority as the authority for Judaism. He's not the Messiah. Far from it. Chas v'chalila. This matter, point number two, he says, this matter is explained through Mary in Avodah Zara 26, 3, and he's got a footnote there, 3, as well as many other places, Bava Kama 38 and Yoma and Ketuvot 16, and look in the Bir Hagolah in Yored Dea 266, for example. He goes on to listen. Where it's written, in our times, they acknowledge the creator of the world, and the Tzemach Tzedek, Hilkot Ribit, writes that the Goyim
in our times acknowledge the creator of the universe. They have the status of a Ger Toshav as long as they do not violate other transgressions of the 7 laws of Noah, and we have a mitzvah to support them. It's kind of a contradiction here. It's like, as long as they don't violate 7 laws of Noah, then they're Noahides. It's actually not what being a Ger Toshav is all about. Being a Ger Toshav is to have the faith, which distinguishes you from people who don't violate it. You get a place in it all comes. I think they've missed the point here. You get a place in the world to come based on whether you have successfully kept all the Sheva Mitzvot without knowing about Judaism, or whether you have believed in Judaism even if you didn't manage to keep all the Sheva Mitzvot. That's the real difference here. Believing in Judaism is the sort of the grace, the chen, which comes and covers for you when you failed to be able to keep all the Sheva Mitzvot. You should be doomed. But because of your faith, you are saved. That's how it works. That's actually the way it is. So they've kind of missed this point. It's like, well, we'll consider them kind of Ger Toshav, as long as they are not Ger Toshav. That's basically what they're saying. We consider them kind of Ger Toshav as long as they're not Ger Toshav. As long as they are keeping the Sheva Mitzvot perfectly, then we'll consider them kind of Ger Toshav. That's actually saying we will take over the role of Hashem in judging whether the person has got a place in the world to come or not based on their observation of all of the Sheva Mitzvot. And if they are of that kind, we'll be friendly with them. As for those who are believers, well, we'll just steer clear from them. That doesn't make any kind of sense. That really misses the whole point. So we're not going to have too much respect for that position either. Then he continues, point 3. Actually, I think I didn't know if I finished that. When they have the status of Ger Toshav, as long as this is actually point 2, as long as they do not violate other transgressions or other transgressions of the 7 laws of Noah, and have the mitzvah to support them. You have a mitzvah to support them. So point 3, he goes on, the Aruch HaShulchan Yoreh Deah 254, paragraph 3 writes that in general we have a mitzvah to help provide the Goyim in our times with a livelihood, as with the Ger Toshav in the days of the Holy Temple. That's fine. That's absolutely correct. That's the Aruch HaShulchan Yoreh Deah 254. Perfect. With regards to point 2 on the Mary's position, not so great. With regards to point 1, yes, but you've put too much emphasis on Rambam. Let's go on to point 4. It says the Shailat Yavetz 41 writes that even according to the view that Bnei Noach are warned against Shituf, attributing partnership with God, with the Rambam's view, nevertheless, the Goyim in our times are categorized as help them and do not hurt them, because the halacha of Akum Goyim that live outside of the land of Israel is that they are not considered idol worshippers. Rather, they are merely following the practices of their forefathers. And this is similar to serving idols under duress or by coercion. So he's saying here, the Shailat Yavetz 41 says basically, even though they are practicing shidduch, we don't blame them for this, and we could treat them as a Ger Toshav still. You don't have to try to mix halacha of the Ashkenazim and the Romanians with the Sephardic halacha based on Rambam. You can just have a big giant, wall between these two and just say never the twain shall meet. There's just two worlds apart. But you find that people try to justify this, and again, you can see that this is a view saying, well, we try to respect Rambam. It's like, why give so much respect to him? He's not the Messiah. He's not the Messiah. He's nothing compared to Sadia Gaon. He's nothing compared to Rashi. So we don't have to think about this guy really. But still, they're very, very obsessed and very, very concerned to make sure that Rambam is respected. I told you why, because the non-Jews think Rambam's great, and therefore he was sort of rehabilitated in the eyes of people who we have to hold on to him because the non-Jews think he's so great. It's like, why? Who cares what the non-Jews think about this guy who has a cherem against him? We don't care what you've got to say, Rambam, really. Well, nonetheless, Rambam does say things which are true, but we have to be careful that he's not saying absolutely everything. If he's your point of reference rather than the Torah, then you've gone astray. And then number 5, it says, the Akum that lived outside the land of Israel are raised as idolaters. If they are not transgressors of the other transgressions of the 7 mitzvot, b'nei Noach, and they function as idolaters only because of the customs of their forefathers, then they have the status of being anusim, coerced, and the Torah prohibition, do not be gracious to them, does not apply to them. Look in the Radvaz in his response to section 4, number 526, where he writes, according to the position of Rabbeinu Tam, who says that the Bnei Noach are not prohibited from shtuf, therefore the prohibition of you shall not be gracious to them is not applicable to Notzim. So, this is again because when we take the Ashkenazi position, there is no problem with this. So, we've got quite a strong position so far coming out that we have to have a positive attitude towards, essentially towards Christians. And even according to the opinion that shtuf is forbidden to Bnei Noach, the Ramban's opinion, in any case, since the Nochrim are outside, this is point 6, are outside of the land of Israel and not fully idolaters, but rather follow the customs of their forefathers, automatically the prohibition of do not be gracious to them is not relevant to them. Point 7, it is explained in the words of Radok that a Nochri, even though he may transgress all of the any or all of the 7 mitzvot of Bnei Noach, if he acts with kindness towards Israel, and even if he is akum, that is Nachri, a pagan living in the land of Israel, not under coercion, then not only are we allowed to do good to him, but we are obligated to do good to him. Of course, it's common sense. Point 8. The halacha that the Radak mentions is an agreement with the Gemara in Megillah 6a, and look in Sefer Chasadim, where it is written that if there is a particular akum who acts with kindness towards Israel, if he is sick, we are obligated to pray on his behalf. And when he dies, we are to say, Zichrona lebracha, may he be remembered for blessing. Point 9. In relation to the akum, there is a prohibition against being gracious to him, for one may not compliment him even to say how handsome this akum is unless he has in mind to praise Hashem. And definitely saying Zichrona lebracha in this is the highest praise in the world. So how can we possibly praise akum who generally transgress the 7 mitzvot of Bnei Noach? Rather, it is certain that the prohibition against being gracious to the akum is predicated on the akum being considered as completely wicked. And if he does good for Israel, then he does not carry the stigma of being considered as completely wicked. How much more, therefore, does this apply to the Ger Toshav? A lot more. Have comments starting to come through. Welcome, your comments are welcome, and I will deal with them later. But I'll finish going through this as much as I can first. Then point 10, again, he makes reference to the Rambam. He says, the Rambam, Hilkot Melachim, 10:10 writes, if a Ben Noach wants to do a mitzvah from the other mitzvot of the Torah in order to receive a reward, we don't prevent him if he does it according to halacha, and if he brings a burnt offering, even a korban olah, we accept it from him. And if he gives tzedakah, we accept it from him. And if it appears that we may give it, his tzedakah, to the poor of Israel, since he is sustained by Israel. And Israel is commanded to support him. If an akum gives charity, we may take it from him, but we give it to the akum poor. We don't give it to our own poor. However, we can receive charity from a Ben Noach, and is not forbidden, since we are also commanded to give them charity because of loving kindness, and not just because of darchei shalom alone, which means peaceful relationships alone. In other words, a Ben Noach is treated as the community. We take charity from them for ours, and we give charity to them for theirs. It's a mutual exchange, and that's obvious because we can even take charity from an akum and give it to an akum for their poor. So how much more can we do it for these as well? So that's like by analogy. Let's carry on. This is even if he is not a Ger Toshav, Chamor, who has properly accepted upon himself in front of the Beit Din the 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach in the time when the Jubilee year is operative. It is permissible because Hashem commanded it in the Torah by the hand of Moshe Rabbeinu, and therefore the Rambam in his halacha does not use the term Ger Toshav, but rather expresses it as Ben Noach. Okay, fair enough. Point 11. A Nachri who does not usually transgress the 7 laws of Bnei Noach has the deen of help him and do not hurt him, and we are commanded to support him. So therefore, how much more for the Ger Toshav, or the people who behave like a Ger Toshav? Point 12. The Radvaz and Shaliat Yavetz add to this that even Nachrim who are truly Akum, but do not serve idols with conscious intent, rather they follow a custom inherited from their forefathers, also are categorically designated as help them, do not hurt them, because the prohibition of do not be gracious to them concerns only the wicked among the Akum. These are Akum, who were in Israel in the times of the temple when Israel had the upper hand. Okay. So it's sort of giving a more comparison designation from there. And point 13, I wrote above concerning that which was written by Harav Hameri, that in places in Shas Boba, Kama Avodah Zara, Ketubot and Yoma, that in general the Gentiles of our times are bound by their religious perspective. They have the deen of a Ger Toshav of the time of the temple, and consequently we are commanded to support them. And it is forbidden to take their lost possessions, just as it is forbidden to take lost items of an Israelite. And this matter is stated in the same way by the Bir HaGola in Choshen Mishpat 425 and 266, and also the Tzemach Tzedek in Yore Dea Hilkot Ribit says this as well. Fine. Point 14. And there are lots of these points, by the way, just so you know, we're going to go through all of these points. This is not a light sort of review of the book. We're actually looking through and studying a good amount of this book and commenting on it as we go along. So let's carry on. Point 14. This is our reaction to this book. Point 14. The Aruch HaShulchan in Yoredea, Hilchot Tzedek 254, rules that the Gentiles of our times have the deen of a Ger Toshav, and we are commanded to support them. Also, Rav Tzvi Hirsch Chayot, in his work Tiferet Yisrael, rules, according to the halacha, that the Gentiles in our period have the deen of a Ger Toshav, because B'nai Noach are not forbidden to believe in Shutuf. So there you go. Also, the Gra on Oruch Chaim 159 ruled, like Rabbeinu Tam, that B'nai Noach are not forbidden Shutuf. The Gaon Rabbi Eliyahu Henkin wrote that the Gentiles of our times have the deen of Ger Toshav, and we are obligated to support them and save them from all danger and difficulty. But since we do not fully accept Ger Toshav except in the times when the Jubilee year is inoperative, this is again a reference to Rambam, therefore we are not obligated to provide them with sustenance to the same extent as with an Israelite, according to the principle of we are to give him what he no longer possesses. So that's if there is an Israelite who's been destitute, you have to give him what he no longer possesses. What he's lost, you have to give it to him. By the way, just try and find a Jewish community that will do that. They'll rather try and find a reason why not to help you than to find a reason to help you. That's just because we live in a very, very capitalistic world. Things have been corrupted terribly since World War II. Okay, point 15. Griz Tzitzel in his Sefer explains the verse, do not deliver a slave to his master, that he should be safe with you, away from the nation of his master. With you he shall dwell in your midst, and place that he will choose in one of your cities, that is good for him. Do not taunt him. From this we can rule 2 matters. Part A. A Canaanite Canaani slave who flees from a land outside of Israel to the land of Israel. B. And concerning Ger Toshav, who comes to settle in the land of Israel in the time that the Jubilee year is observed. For with respect to both these categories, the Torah says, he shall dwell with you in your midst, and it should go well with him. Do not taunt him. And point 7, Devarim 23, verse 17. That's Deuteronomy 23, verse 17. The Sifri comments on this verse where it says, with you he shall dwell in the city itself and not by the border, in the place that he will choose, in the place where he will be able to find a livelihood in one of your cities, so that he should not wander from city to city. It should be good for him from a bad dwelling to a nice dwelling. The command concerning aben Noach, who properly accepts upon himself the 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach, before 3 men of Israel in a time when the Jubilee is observed, is that we make him equal to Israel in the mitzvah of charity to make it possible for him to attain his livelihood in a good way. That is to say that we are commanded to provide his livelihood not merely a meager subsistence, but a generous income, consistent with the principle of it is sufficient to provide him with whatever he is lacking. Point 17. Based on Rashi in Arachin 29, it is implied from the text that there is no Ger Toshav observed except in time when the Jubilee is observed. And the Torah's mandate to equate the Ger Toshav with Israelite is only in the time when the Jubilee is observed. But in a time when the Jubilee year is not operative, we are not commanded to make him equal to Israel. Not equal to Israel. Point 18. In relation to the mitzvah, and you will strengthen your brother and Ger Toshav, he will live with you. He's got a double he will there, which shouldn't have been published. It actually says he will live with you. Probably I should contact the publisher and say there's a mistake on page 27 there. You've got to delete one of the he wills there. There is a mandate according to the Rambam that we are commanded to vitalize Ger and Toshav to save him from his troubles. This means if he is drowning in the river, or if enough rubbish crashes upon him that requires all of our strength to rescue him, or if he is sick and we have to tend to his healing. And then we have a point 9 as well. And it also says this in Rambam Sefer HaMitzvot, positive mitzvah for number 16. See, even the Rambam can say something good sometimes. Point 19, this mitzvah is operative even when the Jubilee year is not operative. And even if it has not accepted upon himself before, if he has not accepted upon himself before 3 Israelites to keep the Sheva mitzvot, it is enough for us to know that he does not transgress them. Then we are obligated to rescue him from all trouble and danger. But the mitzvah of with you he shall dwell in your midst, and it shall be good for him, do not taunt him, is not relevant except for a Ger Toshav at a time when the Jubilee year is observed. Point 20. The Chidushim of Rabbeinu Yonah of Sanhedrin 57 explicitly writes that a ben Noach who keeps 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach, even though he did not accept them upon himself in front of 3 Israelites, obligates us to rescue him from danger. And look in Sefer Yeraim 22:233, where it is written, if a goy keeps the 7 mitzvot, we must count him as a Ger Toshav. There you go. That's it. If a goy keeps the 7 mitzvot, we have to count him as a Ger Toshav. And we are commanded to support him even in a time when the Jubilee year is not observed. Straightforward. Point 21. The Ravad on Hilchot Asurei B'A 14:8 wrote that there is a distinction of Ger Toshav even when the Jubilee year is not operative, but with regards to the obligation to support him broadly with the same degree of support as an Israelite, we are not obligated to do so when a Jubilee year is not operative, because it is the Jubilee year which mandates this. In times when the Jubilee year is operative, they observe Smita, and they are able to provide support without making it a burden on the community, which is not the case now. It appears that the Ravad holds like Rashi on Arachin 29a that the halacha of Ger Toshav only occurs at a time when the Jubilee year is observed. It is only relevant with respect to the scriptural command, with you he will live in your midst, and it will be good for him. And this obligation exists only when we observe the Jubilee. I have to say with these comments concerning Rashi, that of course Rabbeinu Tam was his student, and there's not a distinction between the two views. It's just that some things which Rashi wrote needed further explanation, and we can get that explanation from his students. We don't have to worry that he didn't write it directly. We have a clearer understanding because he will have explained and answered all of his students' questions, and they will have a better understanding of what he means than we do. So we can't just say Rashi said this. You have to say Rashi said this, but his student said that. So we know that Rashi taught something like this. rather than just Rashi said this. So just let's bear that in mind as well. Point, I think I just, point 22. However, the view of Rambam is not so, and it was explained by my uncle, the Grits, at the end of his book. Look there at what he wrote, that the entire distinction of Ger Toshav is based only on his right to live in the land of Israel and is not relevant to the Ger Toshav himself, for he does not accomplish anything new through his personal acceptance of the 7 laws of Noah. So I guess that he's saying there that the real issue, well, let's carry on reading. And his essential being as a Ger Toshav is only to attach to Israel in order to dwell in the land of Israel. And concerning this, we do have the stipulation of there is no Ger Toshav except in a time when the Jubilee year is operative. Now, the reason why he's saying this is because we have the phrase Ger asher b'sha'arech, okay? It means the Ger who is within your gates. So he's saying, well, when do we have gates, or when do we have cities? Well, we only have cities. If we have cities, then Jubilee is going to be in place. If we are in the land, we've inherited the land, when you have our cities, then the Ger who lives in our cities, then that's what the Ger Toshav is. So the assumption is we won't have cities of our own, cities which are under our jurisdiction, until the Jubilee is in place. That's not exactly true, because we have cities which are under. See, the assumption is that the only time when we'll have cities which are under our jurisdiction is when the Jubilee is in place. Therefore, Rambam is always focused on the Jubilee, and so is Rashi, said to say, only focused on the Jubilee. They're not considering it might be possible to have our own cities under our jurisdiction without the Jubilee. And that's more important than the Jubilee itself, because the concept that it has to be under the Jubilee is coming from the point of the phrase, which repeats again and again and again in the Torah, Ger asher b'sha'arech, the Ger who is within your cities or under your jurisdiction. Okay, so it's like, well, I'm sure we won't have any Gerim under our jurisdiction until the Messiah comes. Okay, so that's where the Messiah comes, he'll restore the Jubilee. Therefore, I'm sure we won't have such situation until the Jubilee comes. But they were proven wrong. We have had situations where there are Gerim who lived under the jurisdiction of Jews. For example, the Himyarite kingdom, the Khazarian kingdom. These are two perfect examples where there were non-Jewish people living under the jurisdiction of Jews. So that wasn't when the Yovel was in place, but certainly they were Ger Toshav. Absolutely, were treated as Ger Toshav. So the main point when we talk about the Jubilee is to understand what this means, what this is trying to get at when we talk about the Jubilee. You have to understand it as meaning Noahides who live under the jurisdiction of a Jew. That's what it really means. If you're a Noahide who lives under the jurisdiction of the Jew, then you are under the category Ger asher b'sha'arech, Ger who is within your gates, Israel, or within the gates of Israel. So that's all that matters. Are you a Noahide under the jurisdiction of a Jew? Yes, then you fit the category. That's all that really matters. And we can say that the Jubilee is in place technically, because that is why they're using the phrase Jubilee again and again. They're using it on a technical matter. They're not saying this is something which will only happen when the Messiah comes. They're saying we guess this is something which will only happen when the Messiah comes. And if it happens before that time, then we're talking about that time too. But we think it's something which is only going to happen when the Messiah comes. So they were proven wrong that this has happened. Remember, Rambam doesn't mention Khazaria at all. He doesn't know about it. Doesn't mention Himyar at all. So he doesn't know about it. So these are two cases where it has happened. And he hasn't taken that into account. So we've got to understand the reason why they keep talking about the Jubilee. So again, the main point is whether the Ger is attached to the essential point of being a Ger Toshav is that they are attached to Israel in order to dwell in the land of Israel. And concerning this, we do have the stipulation of there is no Ger except in the time when the Jubilee year is operative. But that can actually mean that the main point of being a Ger is not to dwell in the land of Israel when Messiah comes, but because in fact we hear that will be too late to become a Ger. So it kind of negates the possibility actually. What it means is that your whole point of being a ger is that you're under the jurisdiction of the synagogue, which is what Jesus means when he says to the disciples in Matthew 23, verses 2 and 3, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in the seat of Moses, so do and observe everything they tell you to do. Be careful to do and observe absolutely everything whatsoever they tell you to do. He's basically saying, I'm placing you under their jurisdiction. You are now the gere asher einu. Okay, if you're talking as Hebrew, and the biblical term is ger asher b'sha'arech, ger who is in your gates. Okay, so that is your is referring to Israel. So the ger who is within your gates. It actually refers to the not even to Israel. It actually refers to the Sanhedrin, the ger who is within the Sanhedrin's gates or under the jurisdiction of the court. That's what it actually means. So, so do you place yourself under the jurisdiction of the court? Well, if you believe in the New Testament, and especially Gospel of Matthew, chapter 23, verses 2 to 3, then you do. You say, I believe in the New Testament. It's the word of God. I follow this. I accept it. I wholeheartedly believe. A simple declaration of faith in the New Testament, every word, all of it, the truth, it's all the truth. It's the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I accept it as the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I accept this is real. This is my constitution. If you accept the New Testament as your constitution, you have automatically come under the jurisdiction of the Sanhedrin because of chapter 23, verses 2 to 3. And therefore, you are automatically Ger Toshav. You fulfilled the mitzvah. You fulfilled the criteria. And they'll say, what about the Jubilee years? Well, look, the Jubilee is only going to come when Messiah comes. It's like, well, you believe he is the Messiah, and that's why you're following this. And in fact, this book, according to the Baraita, remember that according to the Baraita, the New Testament is a book for the nations, and Jesus of Nazareth in that is the Messiah for the nations. So the Messiah has come. So the Jubilee is in place. So there you go. You've got the whole thing. It's all there. Should always remember this. That doesn't matter what Israel has to think about it. You say, well, we don't agree. Well, maybe Hashem will punish you for not treating them as Ger Toshav, because according to the Baraita, the sages of Israel, the Chazal, designated the Evangelion for them, and in that they accept the authority of the Sanhedrin. So, the problem is actually a lack of consistency in Judaism. It's not up to non-Jews to sort out that problem. It's up to Jews to sort out that problem. All that's required for the non-Jew is to behave in the way of the Ger Toshav. And by accepting the New Testament, especially Matthew chapter 23, verses 2 to 3, you have accepted the status of Ger Toshav. All you have to do, therefore, is declare in front of 3 Jews. For example, we have this friend who pops along, cool dog, every now and then pops along. We have Martin Feldman in the group. There's me. Just 3 of us, for example, or 3 of us here standing there in front of you. And you make a declaration in front of us 3 that you believe wholeheartedly and totally accept every word of the New Testament as your constitution, as your law. And if you ever were to go astray, we just remind you of the verse and you just shut up and say, I'm totally happy to shut up and accept that word. Yeah. Then you are a Ger Toshav. You've made the declaration that you acknowledge the authority of the scribes and the Pharisees who sit in the seat of Moses because of Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verses 2 to 3. If, however, you believe some reason that the words of Jesus were abrogated after his resurrection and that only Paul's teachings matter from now on, then there's something wrong with you. And we can never identify that kind of person as a Ger Toshav. That kind of person cannot be a Ger Toshav. But if you can say, no, whatever Jesus said, I believe, I trust, I do. He's my king. I accept it. He's my Messiah. Then we say, well, good. You're a Ger Toshav then because of Matthew chapter 23, verses 2 to 3. All right, let's carry on. So about this, I wondered that surely there are many statutes that have nothing to do with dwelling in the land of Israel, and they are explicitly applicable to the Ger Toshav and not to the Ben Noach. For example, a Ben Noach is killed over manslaughter. It means loses a place in the world to come because of manslaughter. While a Ger Toshav who kills inadvertently is punished with exile. And there are many examples. Manslaughter is accidental murder. You kill somebody by accident.
Now, a Ger Toshav who kills somebody by accident has to flee to the cities of exile, the cities of refuge. They are eligible to flee to the cities of refuge. Whereas a Ben Noach is liable for the death penalty. Why is it that there's a difference? Because thou shalt not kill is one of the commandments, and for the Bnei Noach, it's simply thou shalt not kill, full stop, the end. If you kill somebody, you've lost your place in the world to come. You failed to keep all the 7 laws of Noah. You failed to keep the Brit Shalom. You failed to keep the Sheva Mitzvot. The Rainbow Covenant has been broken. But it was an accident. Too bad. It doesn't say in the Sheva Mitzvot, you shall not kill, but it's all right if it was just an accident and you didn't mean to. It doesn't say that. It says there's no wriggle room here. You shall not kill. Full stop. End of story. Close the book. Job done. Did you kill somebody? Too bad. You've lost your place in the world to come. Whereas if you are a believer in Judaism, you become a Ger Toshav, and you killed somebody else, it's by accident. It's okay. You're not liable for the death penalty. Meaning you can still have a place in the world to come. So there is mercy. There is chen. That's grace. There's the principle of grace applicable to the Ger Toshav, whereas grace does not apply to the average Noahide who kills somebody by accident. That person needs to find salvation. Salvation meaning a way back into the world to come, because they've lost their place in the world to come. They have been executed. They have lost their eternal life. They've been cut off. They've been executed. So there's a very important principle. He says, there's an example of a difference between a Ben Noach and a Ger Toshav. Chen, essentially, is the difference. Grace is the difference between a Ben Noach, a simple Ben Noach, and the Ger Toshav. If you want to use other terms, a simple Meshulam versus a Ma'min. A Meshulam is somebody who keeps the 7 laws of Noah, but if they broke it, then they're executed, they're cut off. Whereas a Ma'min who kills inadvertently, well, Judaism applies, and Judaism has jurisdiction in this case. Judaism has no jurisdiction over a regular Noahide. Right? You can be a Noahide, an Australian Aboriginal Noahide who's never heard of Judaism. You just happen to think that killing is a bad idea, stealing is a bad idea, sexual immorality is a bad idea, blasphemy is a bad idea, idolatry is a bad idea, that cruelty to animals is a bad idea, and that injustice is a bad idea. You just happen to think that that's the case. And you think, yeah, that seems right to me. I've come to this by my own rational thinking. Judaism has no jurisdiction over you. We say that if you do live by that code and you die having never broken that code, you get a place in the world to come, according to Judaism at least. You might not know that, but Judaism says so. But we don't have jurisdiction over you. It's just that Judaism teaches us that you're saved in that case. However, if you break one of those laws, Judaism doesn't have a right to say, well, according to Judaism, you wouldn't have been considered to be a thief in that situation, or you wouldn't have been considered to be a murderer in that situation, or you wouldn't have been considered to be an adulterer in that situation. We can't comment, because what do you care about what Judaism thinks concerning your situation? Judaism, according to Judaism, this would be the case, but too bad you didn't know about Judaism, so tough luck. You didn't know about Judaism, so all that applied to you was the 7 laws. You broke one of the 7 laws, and that's tough luck. I'm sorry about that. Pity, really. But that's why Jews have a duty to go out there and preach to the nations about Judaism, so that people who do inadvertently break one of these laws know that there are other ways to repent, to get out of the punishment of losing your place in the world to come for having lost one of these principles of civilization. But that means that you will have to accept the jurisdiction of Judaism. You'll have to say, well, then, give me that jurisdiction, please. I want that jurisdiction. I want to be under the jurisdiction of Judaism. Then you can say, okay, well, make the declaration in front of a court. And a court is always a court of magistrates. A magistrate's court is three magistrates. You have to have a legal basis for this. The 3 magistrates means 3 people in it might be Yikas category Beit. Okay, you couldn't have 3 people in Yikas category Gimel, but 3 people in Yikas category Beit. You go to the magistrates, the 3 magistrates, and you say, I declare that I wish to be under the jurisdiction of Judaism. They say, fine, from now on you're under the jurisdiction of Judaism. In belts, I understand that they also say, well, let's just take you to the mikveh and then you'll be baptized and then you'll be fully under the restriction of Judaism. And then if you inadvertently kill somebody by accident, Judaism says, well, it's all right because, there are exceptions, there are ways around that according to Judaism. And now Judaism applies to you. So you're free from blame in a situation like that. But you have to be under the jurisdiction. And that's what distinguishes a simple ben Noach from a ger Toshav. Jurisdiction. And that jurisdiction is basically declaring, I believe in the court. Now, there might not be a court around for you to declare that. But there was a court, according to the Baraita, there was a court which was around, which provided you with the New Testament in the year 86, roughly. They provided with the New Testament, and that court was the Sanhedrin in Yavne. They provided you with the New Testament, and by believing and accepting the New Testament, okay, and going through your Tevilah, going through your baptism, you have believed and declared that you accept the heavenly court established by Hashem on Mount Sinai, on the first Shavuot, on the first Pentecost. And you are under that jurisdiction, the jurisdiction of that heavenly court, which provided you with the New Testament in the first place. So regardless of whether there aren't any Jews in your town or around that you can do, just simply by making this declaration of faith in this book, you have basically stood in front of the Yavne Sanhedrin and said, I believe. I accept the authority of the Yavne Sanhedrin. That's what you've basically said, which is an eternal Sanhedrin. So you are a ger Toshav. You see? You're no longer a simple ben Noach. You're not just simply somebody who happens to be keeping the Sheva Mitzvot. You're a ger Toshav. And if you want to know more about that, then you have to go and read more about what the scribes and Pharisees got to say for the ger Toshav. So there you go. That's what I'm doing here. That's what I'm reading this book out for you, so you can get an idea with all the caveats which I've already presented at the beginning of this show. All right, then. And there are many other examples. Behold, the Kabbalah, personal acceptance made by the ger Toshav, carries with it new statutes also to the ger Toshav himself. The Torah itself makes a clear distinction between the ger Toshav and the ben Noach. According to this, then it is fair to say that the deen is that there is no ger Toshav except in the times of Jubilee year. According to the thinking of Rambam, the essence of the distinction is that in a time when there is no Jubilee year, there is no deen for the ger Toshav, and this results in his being no different from a regular ben Noach. And look in the Maggid Mishneh on the laws of Isuri Bia, forbidden relationships, who wrote that this is also the simple explanation of the view of the Rambam. However, the Ravad has a different view on the matter, and he holds that only with respect to few specific laws does the distinction of the ger Toshav depend on its observance of the Jubilee year. Only in a few. But the view of the Rambam seems simple and clear. The Gritz explains that according to the Shitat HaRambam, there is no deen of a ger Toshav at all in a time when the Jubilee year is not observed. That's Rambam. Rambam's wrong. Reality is there are only a few issues which apply to the Jubilee year, meaning that you can be a ger Toshav, but the fullness of the laws which apply to you will not be possible to observe until the Jubilee year is established. Exactly the same as it is with all Jews. We also can't observe for all of the laws of Torah until the Jubilee is in place. But we can observe them by faith, meaning also that the ger Toshav can have faith in those laws, even though they're not being observed. And that is also putting you in a case of like Abraham, who believed by faith. Okay, point 23. Harav Hameri writes in several places of the Talmud that the nations which follow the ways of the religion and doctrine carry the distinction of ger Toshav, and we are obligated to support them. And point 24. And look in Sefer Veshav HaKohen of the Gaon Raphael Hamburg, who wrote
that even according to the view of Rabbeinu Tam and Rabbeinu Yonah, B'nai Noach are not forbidden shituf. Nevertheless, the Ger Toshav is forbidden shituf. Meaning shituf doesn't come under the total category of avodah zarah when it comes to Noahites, B'nai Noach. But it does for Ger Toshav. Hence, I push miaphysitism over diophysitism on this channel. We can say a diophysite is guilty to shituf and maybe a ben Noach, but it's not a Ger Toshav. Whereas somebody who's a miaphysite, they're definitely Ger Toshav. It appears that according to Rambam, this is point 25, there are two types of Ger Toshav. A Ger Toshav Gamor, who accepts upon himself 7 mitzvot b'nei Noah since they were commanded to Israel at Mara, and a Ger Toshav who keeps 7 mitzvot since they were commanded to Adam and Noah. The 7 mitzvot were commanded to Adam and Noah. You say to Adam? Yes. The command against cruelty to animals, you say, it's actually it's min chai. It means you don't eat meat with blood in it. But you'll say, but animals were forbidden before Noah. Before Noah, they were vegetarians. And the answer is, well, clearly then, if you're a vegetarian, you're clearly not eating any blood. So, same law applies. It's just the law has been relaxed from the time of Noah, and that no blood means you can still eat the meat, but you have to pour the blood off it. Okay? And then, in fact, of course, under Judaism, pouring the blood off means you don't have to pour off all of the blood and wash it until the meat is white. You know, it's got to be there can be a small amount of blood in it, but it's got to be dead. The animal has to be dead and killed with a way of draining the blood off it. Or it can have died by itself, but you still have to wash the blood of it. What you can't do is you can't eat an animal which has been killed in a way that the blood was not drained off of it. That's what's prohibited. That's what's totally prohibited. You're allowed what we call nabilah, and you're allowed what's called treifa. That means you can have carrion which dies of its own, but as long as you wash the blood off, and you can have meat which is torn by beasts, and the blood has been drained off in the place that it's been killed by a wild beast. But you cannot have an animal which is killed without draining the blood off. So draining the blood off is the important. The life blood must be drained off. That's the fundamental point of the Minchai rule. So let's get back to it then. So the command of the Ger Toshav keeps the 7 laws which they were commanded to Adam and Noah. You say, I thought they were the laws of Noah, not the laws of Adam. And the answer is, well, if you're a vegetarian, you're certainly not eating any blood, are you? So you don't have to worry. It's just simply the law under Noah. That law against blood was relaxed a little bit. That's all. It's the difference between you could say the covenant of Noah versus the covenant of Adam, which is all derech eretz anyway. So, and he continues, and this second type of Ger Toshav does not fall into the name or category of Ger Toshav because he did not accept them before a Beit Din of Israel, because there was no Israel at the time of Noah or Adam. However, we are commanded to support him because he is permitted to dwell in the land of Israel. He is permitted. Therefore, the important thing is whether you satisfy the criteria of being permitted to dwell in the land of Israel according to Hashem, not whether you are actually a citizen of the land of Israel. That's irrelevant. The question is, are you qualified? And we're not talking about qualified according to the state of Israel, because the state of Israel couldn't care less about these laws. Are you qualified according to the laws of God? Yes. Okay, well then that's fine. State of Israel is a different matter. State of Israel genuinely doesn't want this because that would cause a problem for the state of Israel. There would be suddenly millions and millions of Ger Toshav in the land of Israel, and that's not what the state of Israel wants. It would be inundated with people who believe in Jesus, and that would be a serious problem. They would be inundated with Muslims, and that would be a serious problem. Then you wouldn't be able to guarantee the election of a Jewish leader, which is what Israel wants. So there's a bit of politics involved in affirming that Rambam is right and we can't have any Ger Toshav
until the Jubilee is in place, until the Messiah comes. There's a bit of politics involved in this. Because if you were to follow the law of God as I'm describing here, and as is written in the book, then you would have to allow all of these people citizenship in the state of Israel, and that's not what the state of Israel wants. So there's some politics involved in it. All right, let's carry on. And look in the Rambam, Isrei Bia 14:7, where he writes, "Who is a Ger Toshav? He is an Akum who accepts upon himself not to serve idols with the rest of the mitzvot that were commanded to Bnei Noach, and he has not been circumcised, nor has he immersed in the mikveh. Behold, we accept him, and he is considered from the Hasadei Umat Ha'alam, the pious ones from the nations of the world. Why do we call his name Toshav? It is because we are permitted to settle him among the land of Israel, just as we have explained in Hilchot Achum." Okay, so he's called Toshav, but he's Hasadei Umat Ha'alam. And in Halacha 8 it is written, "And we do not proactively receive the Ger Toshav except in a time when the Jubilee year is observed. But in our times, even if he accepts upon himself the entire Torah, with the exception of one minute detail, we do not proactively receive him." These are the words of the Rambam, of course, who is much more... he's banned anyway. He's got a cherem. He's much more sort of shamuti. "And it follows that even in the time when the Jubilee is not observed, he is considered a Ger Toshav anyway, and we are commanded to support him." And in Halacha 8, the Rambam writes, "But we do not accept a Ger Toshav in a Beit Din except when the Jubilee is observed. Thus, when the Jubilee is not observed, we do not accept in the Beit Din. Otherwise, I have to accept all the Muslims as Ger Toshav." And Rambam didn't want to do that. "And I have to expect all the Christians," and he didn't want to do that. Rambam was very, very anti everybody else. He was only concerned about Jews and preserving things for Jews, and he didn't want to have to deal with non-Jews. He wasn't interested in them. "This means that when the Jubilee is not observed, even if he is careful to observe the 7 mitzvot, he does not have the distinction of a full Ger Toshav, and we are not obligated to support him in the same way as a Ger Toshav without a Beit Din, or in the same way in a time when the Jubilee is not observed." So that's just I think it's a kind of xenophobia, to be honest. That's what he's being motivated. He's actually motivated to change the laws of God because he wants to follow after his own heart rather than after what God has commanded. Because what God has commanded is too loving for him. He doesn't want to be that loving. He wants to be cold and closed to the foreigner. So he's changing his definition of how he follows the law because he doesn't want to have to go down that path of that much love. He's cold-hearted. He's hard-hearted, cold-hearted. How can you say it? He's a cold-hearted, cruel man. So he doesn't want to have to make it possible for us to have to look after and to be respectful towards these people. He would like to be able to cut off their heads. That's what Rambam wants. But that's not what God wants. That's why Rambam always he never ever refers to it as they lose their place in the world to come. He always says they're liable for the death penalty. What is the death penalty in Judaism? It means you lose your place in the world to come. Why doesn't Rambam say that? Because he really wants to kill you. He really, really wants to kill you. That's Rambam's problem. He hates you. And in the end, his children left Judaism. They became Muslims because he was such a hate-filled person. Which is another good reason why we shouldn't accept the teachings of Rambam. If he was so great, why did his children become Muslims? Clearly, he's not a great teacher. He has a cherem against him, but these people don't know that because they are the dregs who are trying to learn about Judaism following the destruction of the Jewish community by the Nazis in World War II. Okay, point 26. Behold, we see from Sefer Yeraim that the prohibition of "do not settle them" applies only to those who transgress the 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach, but not to a goy who does not transgress, even though he did not accept the 7 laws upon himself in the Beit Din at a time of Jubilee. Point 27. So actually, before I go into point 27, basically saying a goy who keeps the 7 laws is fine, but anybody who transgresses 7 laws is no good. The goy who keeps the 7 laws, therefore, is coming under the category of Noahide. Point 27. And Ben Noach is a goy who does not accept upon himself the 7 mitzvot in front of a Beit Din of Israelites, but he is a Gentile who we have established as one who does not transgress the 7 mitzvot. So there's a distinction, he says, between a Ben Noach and Ben Noach who accepts the 7 laws in front of a Beit Din, in front of a court of magistrates. Those who accept the court are higher level of Ben Noach than those who don't accept the court. But a Ben Noach still, and those who do accept the court still, they do their utmost to keep the Sheva Mitzvot. The only difference is that when a Ben Noach breaks the law, there's no grace. Whereas when one who accepts the court breaks the law, then there's some grace because Judaism is actually full of grace. So, although he is not called a Ger Toshav, Chamor, he is still included in the mitzvah of Ger Toshav, of Ger and Toshav, and he should live with you. He should live with you if everything was amazing, but it's not. So, unfortunately, he doesn't live with you. But nevertheless, he should. And we are obligated only to save him from trials and hardships, and therefore we are permitted to give their tzedakah to the poor of Israel. If they give charity to us, we can give it to the poor of Israel, and we can give charity to them. The Rambam in Hilchot Zichia Umatna says that it is allowed to give a free gift to every Ger Toshav who does not transgress the 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach, citing the verse Ger and Toshav, and he shall live with you. So even the Rambam accepts this point. He can't deny it. He's trying to find ways to deny, but there are some times he just can't deny because the law is clear, so he has to go along with it. But he's trying really, really hard. Rambam tries really, really hard to try and get around having to be nice to these people, but he can't find a way every single time. So you get the idea that there is a difference between the Ger Toshav Gamor and the Ger Toshav Bit Gamor being the one who has taken the oath in front of a Beit Din, and the Ger Toshav regular, meaning that the one who hasn't taken an oath before a Beit Din, but should take an oath before a Beit Din, or is counted as if he had taken an oath before a Beit Din, but is not required to observe all the laws as applied in the Jubilee because the Jubilee is not yet in place. So that's the difference. So if you are, all of you, Gerei Toshav today, then when everything has been fulfilled and we're all living in the New Jerusalem, then you'll all be Gerei Toshav Gamor. You see? That's what happens. You're children of promise. That's what it means. You're children of promise, waiting to achieve that status, to gain that status when that time comes. And you are equal, therefore, as Ger Toshav, as just as much as in the time of Adam and the children of Adam all the way down to Noah. All of them were also Ger Toshav, but they were not Ger Toshav Gamor because there was no Israel to take a vow in front of the Beit Din at that time. All right. Actually, kind of lost my place just now. He shall live with hardships. Therefore, we are permitted to give the tzedakah to the poor of Israel. The Rambam in Hilchot Zichia Umatna says that it is allowed to give a free gift. Yeah, we did that. Hara, does not transgress, so citing the verse. Yeah. Harav Hameri on Avodah Zarah 26. Avodah Zarah 26 writes these words: the goyim and the shepherds of the flocks, sheep, and goats of Israel are blocked from providing sacrifices because of the suspicion of robbery and depravity, indicating that they threw off the yoke of Torah. They do not. They do this not because they lack being religious, but because of money and lust. Therefore, nevertheless, whatever troubles come to them are their own fault, and we are not obligated to help them or save them. This is Rav Hameri on Avodah Zarah 26. The goyim and the shepherds of the flocks, sheep and goats of Israelites are blocked from providing sacrifices because of the suspicion of robbery and depravity, indicating that they threw off the yoke of the Torah. They do this not because they lack being religious, but because of money and lust. Nevertheless, whatever troubles come to them are their own fault, and we're not obligated to help them or save them. Mary is not very pleasant in this way. He's being strict. He's being strict. It's fine. 9 and then 29. Besides this, with the goyim, one needs to investigate their prior actions before dealing with a specific goy. That is to say, with idol worshippers, whom we would not consider as having religion and tradition. The typical idol worshipper in the times of Chazal were sunken into sinning and crookedness, such as robbery and sexual sins, and were suspected of murdering Jews, and it was forbidden to make any connection with them. Point 30. And it is obvious from the language of Harav Hameri that only idol worshippers who view every transgression and crooked behavior as good in their eyes are excluded from being saved by us, and are in the category of do not help them and do not hurt them. If they are sullied by transgression and crookedness, then the distinction do not help them and do not hurt them applies. And the position of Tosafot in Chulin 13 is that the distinction of do not help them and do not hurt them is relevant only to Akum in Eretz Israel, who were not under duress from their parents and environment. And it is as written by Shure Karbon in Gittin, who argues on the language of the Rambam in Hilkot Melachim with respect to Akum outside the land of Israel who are under duress, then we are obligated to save them from every trouble because of mercy, as in Hashem is good to all and his mercy is above all his deeds. So if you find when Jews seem to be very ambivalent towards me, if you find this, I think, oh, Jews seem to be a bit ambivalent towards me. It's like they don't want to be involved with it. They're not unpleasant to me, but they're also not really sort of helpful to me. This is because they're following this principle of do not help them and do not hurt them, because they are not convinced that you are in the category of Ger Toshav, or they are simply ignorant about the distinction between Ger Toshav and Ger Toshav Gamor, and they're not sure whether they don't know about that, so they assume that everybody is not a Ger Toshav because the Jubilee is not in place, and they're following Rambam Mr. Punyan. So you see, Rambam is guilty of leading so many Jews astray, preventing them from keeping mitzvot because of the popularity of Rambam. So, and why is Rambam popular? Because the non-Jews made him popular. He already had a cherem against him. He was banned, but the non-Jews made him popular and therefore shot themselves in the foot. It's really stupid, isn't it? But there you go. Shot themselves in the foot. Now, point 31. Therefore, our sages say that the Hasdei Umatot Olam have a share in the world to come if they comprehend what is fitting and comprehend of the knowledge of the blessed Creator, and they refine their souls by rectifying their character traits. And there is no doubt that anyone who refines himself with proper character traits and proper wisdom, with faith in the blessed Creator, has a portion in the world to come. And therefore, our sages, the sages of the true wisdom, have said that even an Achum who strives in the Torah, behold, he is a Kohen Gadol, a Jewish high priest. These are the words of the Rambam himself. So even an Akum who strives in the Torah is like a Kohen Gadol. And that's from racist Rambam. Okay, so that's what the passage, the whole section from concerning what was written by in the Oda Israel Yosef ben Chai from Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik's work. Now we have Rabbi David Katz and his commentary on this in his conclusion, his summary and conclusion by Rabbi David Katz. So let's see how he does. Summary and conclusion. Today's Torah observant world largely lacks an understanding of the Ger Toshav. Agreed. The current views are formed entirely through communal osmosis and not by the Torah scholarship that it requires. Agreed. The Ger Toshav does exist today, even according to the Rambam. Agreed. Today's Ger Toshav, however, is not a complete Ger Toshav. Rather, he has the deen of a Ger Toshav in selected matters, basically in everything, with the exception of what applies under the Jubilee. Fair enough. I wouldn't say that he's not a complete Ger Toshav, but just because of things that Rambam is, he's not a complete Ger Toshav because Rambam's trying to find a way to exclude him. But even if you're trying to be a Rambamist, you have to say that he is a kind of Ger Toshav, even if he's not a complete Ger Toshav.
He has the deen of a Ger Toshav in selected matters, even according to Rambam. Fair enough. Okay, Rabbi Katz, we go along with you. Absolutely. Then the 10 Commandments commands us to rest the Ger in your gates. The sages learn from this that the one who is not the Ger in your gates is a Nachri and can be used as a Shabbos goy. We learn from this that the Ger in your gates has a connection to Dine Yisrael and Torah Yisrael, laws and teachings that apply to the Jew, and he has a unique commandment concerning his observance of Shabbos, as it says explicitly in Keritot 9a. He is the Ger Toshav of today. He continues, the Ger in your gates of today seeks to reject, or already has rejected, Shituf, and to live his or her life with an active belief in the God of Israel. This is the non-Jew that Rashi's commentary to the first verse of Shema speaks of so highly, the Lord who is our God and not the God of the other nations will be in the future one Lord, as it is stated. For then I will turn to the peoples a pure language, that they may call upon the name of the Lord, as it is stated, in that day shall the Lord be one, and his name shall be one. Rashi's future is our present, and it is every Torah observant Jew's obligation, says Rabbi Katz, to make a profound paradigm shift, to go from learning this matter by osmosis to pursuing it from the truth of the Torah. Very good. I like this. I don't think he's very good at, I just said very good, but let me just retract a little bit. I don't think he's very good at summarizing, but he's good enough. And I think that's fine. Then we have the next thing is Rabbi Nachum Eliezer Rabinovich. And we have an introduction to the work. It says, the following is Rabbi David Katz's unofficial translation and compilation of Rabbi Rabinovich's halachic works concerning Ger Toshav, including unofficial translation of Shtut Siach Nachum 93 concerning Ger Toshav Bzman Hazeh. And then it says, a comment from Rabbi Nachum Eliezer Rabinovich. It says, a Ger Hasid Toshav, this is Hasidei Umat Olam, who wants to settle in the land of Israel amidst the nation of Israel and properly accepts Kabbalah, that is Kabbalah, upon himself, as such, before 3 Jewish men, if he wants to gird himself with additional mitzvot beyond the 7 laws of Noah, behold, this is not considered making a new religion. For a Ger Toshav, which cannot be a Yovel Ger Toshav, that means a Jubilee Ger Toshav, for Rambam Hilakot Melechim 8:10-11 is not speaking about a Ger Toshav, see Siach Nachum 93, is not prohibited from studying Torah or from keeping Shabbos. That, behold, it is not his desire to create a new religion nor enlist innocent Jews into a new religion. And that's from the commentary to Sefer Shoftim by Rabbi Nachum Eliezer Rabinovich in reference to his Hilkot Melachim 10:9. Then we go through, we have the work which is relevant, which will go through a few passages. How many pages? Hope I'm not missing one. We'll continue. He goes on with Rabinovich's work from page 41 until page 93, in the same way that I've just read out his how he recounts and translates Soloveitchik's work. He then goes on to Rabinovich's work. And we're not going to read from page 41 to 93, but I'm just going to jump to the conclusion. Somebody's drilling on the wall there. I hope that's not causing a problem. I don't know why they decided to drill right now. Okay, so he goes to conclusion. Conclusion: 1 potential Noahide, 2 actual paths by Rabbi David Katz, based on the psak of the Lubavitcher Rebbe of Rambam's Ger Toshav Ger Chassid. Have I actually? I hope I haven't skipped his conclusion of Rabinovich. Let me just check, make sure that I have. Don't know why he's mentioning Lubavitch at this point. So maybe there's the drilling again. I hope it's not bothering you. Looks like it is this. Let's just check the page number at the beginning, because there was this table of contents. It should be. Yeah, the conclusion for Rabinovich is page 95. So I'm not sure why he's saying, based on the Psak of Lubavitcher Rebbe on Rambam's Ger Toshav Ger Chassid. He's got a footnote there, Rambam Hilchot Melechim 8:10-11. I don't know why he mentions that. Probably we would have found out if we read through those 50 pages, almost. Well, just over 50 pages. Today's righteous Gentile walks along a spiritual path, much the same as any other true believer of any other faith. The path is cliche, but since the Torah is the kosher path according to its own true believers, the kosher path, not surprisingly, has found its fork in the road. The Noahide plight would go something like this. And he says, the road not taken by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveller long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy, and I wanted where, though as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, it leaves no steps that had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere, ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. It's a very nice analogy. I think it's a great choice. Robert Frost's poem is a great choice of poem to describe the difference between the way of the Jew versus the way of the Noahide who believes, the Noahide believer. It is still Judaism, but one is the path less trodden. And even today, we find people who come onto this channel, they listen for a while, and they join the abedan, and they get involved, and then they get convinced by somebody, some Messianic Jew comes along, or somebody pushing Judaization and full conversion Judaism comes along. They go off this path, and they try to go the other way instead. But we want to push the idea that you should walk this path, the less trodden path, because narrow is the way, and few are they who find it. It's the less trodden path. And Rabbi Katz, God bless him, although I was very cautious in the way I presented him at the beginning of this book, I don't find anything wrong with what he's writing so far. So he's saying, if you ask a Noahide what a Noahide is and where it comes from by today's standards, he would most certainly answer you, Noahide keeps the 7 laws of Noah, and it comes from the Torah. If you ask an educated and invested Orthodox Jew, you'll get roughly the same answer. The only significant difference being that a rabbi might quote to you Rambam as a source of Noahism, in practice citing the exact source if you're lucky. The Rambam sources the main ingredients of the path of the righteous Gentile as follows. This is the summary of Rabinovitz's work. Hilchot Melechim 8:10-11. Moses only gave the Torah and mitzvot as an inheritance to Israel, as Devarim states. That is Devarim 20:30. That's Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 4 states. The Torah is the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob, and to all those who desire to become ger from among the nations, as Bamidbar 15:15 states, the ger shall be the same as you. However, someone who does not desire to accept Torah and mitzvot should not be forced to. By the same regard, Moses was commanded by the Almighty to compel all the inhabitants of the world to accept the commandments given to Noah's descendants. If one does not accept these commandments, he should be losing his place in the world to come. According to Rambam says, of course, should be executed. A person who formally accepts these commands is called Ger Toshav in every place. This acceptance, Kabbalah, must be made in the presence of 3 Chavarim. Now, when speaking with Rabbi Yeshayahu Hollander, he says that 3 Chavarim doesn't even have to be 3 Jews. 3 Chavarim is basically 3 believers, if you like. It's actually, the word Chavarim is friends.
Now, Jesus said to his disciples, I no longer call you my disciples, I call you my friends. So basically any of the I suppose teachers who are living by the New Testament can be considered three Havarim. So that's just Yeshayahu Honda's caveat I'm putting in here, just in case you forget other things which have been said on this channel beforehand. So anyone who agrees to circumcise himself and allows 12 months to pass without circumcising himself is considered as one of the nations. That is, if anyone agrees to circumcise himself and says, okay, I'm going to get converted and circumcised, and allows 12 months to pass without circumcising himself, is considered as a goy. Okay? That is like a ger sheker, somebody who didn't convert properly. Now, anyone who accepts Kabbalah upon himself the fulfillment of the 7 mitzvot and is precise in their observance is considered as from one of the Hasadei Umat Ha'olam and will merit a place in the world to come, guaranteed. This applies only when he accepts them and fulfills them, because the Holy One, blessed be he, commanded them in the Torah and informed us through Moses, our teacher, that Noah's descendants had been commanded to fulfill them previously. Remember, he's quoting Rambam. However, if he fulfills them out of intellectual conviction, he is not a Ger Toshav, nor from Hasadei Umat Olam, nor of their wise men. I think it's actually saying if he fulfills them out of intellectual conviction, he is of their wise men. He's one of the Chochmei Umat Olam, but he's not Hasadei Umat Olam. I'm pretty sure there's a mistranslation there, but that's what he's translated. In this Rambam, we find 4 essential components, says Rabbi Katz, that will mold the path of the righteous Gentile. Number 1, the Noahide requirements. Number 2, the Hasid requirements. Number 3, the Ger Toshav requirements. And number 4, the Beit Din requirements. All of these 2 halachot in this Rambam source offer an immense amount of information concerning Gentiles and their path to righteousness, and we will focus on these 4 fundamentals with their source and context in the oral Torah tradition. So he starts. Point 1, the Noahide requirements. If you are involved with Noahides today, then it would be safe to assume that you are familiar with the Lubavitcher Rebbe and his association with Noahism. For all intents and purposes, he invented the contemporary version of it, at least as far as Orthodox involvement goes. There is a clear and well-established bond between Noahide and the Rebbe. The Rebbe wrote and spoke about Noahide and its obvious messianic relevance, and he established the proper halachot to follow by adhering to our aforementioned Rambam. In short, the Rebbe laid out, that is Lubavitcher Rebbe, laid out, and these people, of course, be careful, because both Rambam and Lubavitcher Rebbe both got cherems against them, so and that's always important to consider, especially, I mean, I always tell Orthodox Jews they shouldn't be listening to me, but I am, by every standard, certainly qualified and correct to teach non-Jews about Noahide Judaism. But the cherem against Lubavitcher Rebbe and Rambam is again for Jews to be careful to consider what he's saying, whereas a Noahide is already going to be sort of taking a bit of a pinch of taking all this with a pinch of salt, but there is probably more relevance for a Noahide than there is for a Jew to be serious about it. But let's have a see. So it's the Rebbe laid out who, what, when, where, how, and why of a Noahide according to Torah. Although we have to also say he was extremely ignorant of the Baraita concerning the authorship and the origin of the Evangelion. That's certainly clear. And the who, what, when, where, how, and why of the Noahide had already been laid out very, very well in the Evangelion. So do we need to refer to Lubavitcher Rebbe? I don't think so. Let's carry on and see what he says. According to Torah, and we undoubtedly follow in the footsteps of the Rebbe when it comes to understanding Noahide Torah, says Rabbi Katz, who was obviously some kind of Chabadnik. The Rebbe's Noahide slightly changed the shape and form over the decades, ultimately becoming something even more dynamic than the archetypal Noahide that the Rebbe knew in the legend that was Dr. Wendell Jones, who is obviously the one who started the project which I continue today.
By the time of the Rebbe's passing in 1994, the Noahide path was grafted back into civilization and into the consciousness of anyone who would come to look into what it means to be light unto nations. The internet set this new movement into motion, and soon the cyber truth seeker would easily be able to find numerous websites online, organizations who were set up to help Noahides on the path continue the work of the Rebbe. Unfortunately, that's also a downside as well, that it was continuing the work of the Rebbe rather than actually having a good overview of Judaism. The most notable in specific is asknoah.org, an online organization of people who really don't have much knowledge about it, who after compiling the Divine Code, a Shulchan Aruch for Noahides, partnered up with Pirkei Shoshanim, another online organization that specializes in teaching Shulchan Aruch studies. By the way, I have the Divine Code. Where is it? I think we've read that on this channel before. Is it in here? I can't see it now. Where is it? On the shelf somewhere. It's got to be up there somewhere. It's a gigantic book, but for some reason I can't see it on the shelf up there. Well, anyway, we'll go through that one day as well. Be'ezrat Hashem. So, Divine Code, I'm partnered up with the Pirkei Shoshanim, another online organization that specializes in teaching Shulchan Aruch studies. The rally cry for this team is to put all Noahides and Jews in teaching positions on the same page, teach uniformity in the Noahide laws, and pave the path going forward if the Rebbe was the father of the Noahide movement. This team thought to become its official institution. And that's, interesting that really everything online is a Chabadnik Noahide system, except for Wiki Noah, which is the only one which isn't Chabad, to be honest. So you get a very different view from Wiki Noah because it's not under the sort of jurisdiction of trying to, as it says here, teach uniformity in the Noahide laws. We don't want that. We want to try to teach diversity in it because we are not trying to push Menachem Schneerson as the Messiah. Okay, so the Divine Code theology. This is the let's have a look. The next section, it says the Divine Code theology works off the following principles, which in theory would work and provide a safe and kosher path for all who walk on. However, the problem with this ideology is that to achieve its success, those who created this path, Shita, deliberately changed the established halacha of the Rambam and therefore of the Rebbe. Yes, well, that's not necessarily a problem though. A Noahide is an achum, an idolater. A Noahide is a Shabbos goy. There is no possibility of any type of ger or ger toshav, only a full convert, ger tzedek. This is a problem. I would say that this is actually people who have not deliberately changed the established halacha of the Rambam, but rather people who have been led astray by the halacha of the Rambam, which is never going to be understood properly unless you've studied it through Soloveitchik. So I wouldn't be as critical as Katz is towards the people who have come up with this principle, this misunderstanding, which he's listing here. I wouldn't be too critical of those people who come up with this misunderstanding. I would say it's actually Rambam's fault that they came up with this misunderstanding, that a Noahide is an akum, an idolater, that a Noahide is a Shabbos goy, that there is not a possibility of any type of ger or ger toshav, only a full convert, a ger tzedek. The Divine Code is established halacha for Noahides, undisputed, and follows the halacha as it exists historically. The Rambam is the halacha and the word of God. The Divine Code is translated in its original work, Sheva Mitzvot Hashem, authored by Rabbi Moshe Weiner. Ger means convert. Ger Toshav means resident alien. The Rambam, who mentions Ger Toshav, is referring to a Ger Toshav in the land of time of Jubilee. Ger Toshav today would be a type of partial conversion. Ger Toshav is considered making a new religion. Ger Toshav requires a beit din. A Noahide cannot reject shituf with Kabbalah. All contemporary sources and understandings of Chazal follow this reasoning and understanding. The Divine Code is the only shita. The Rebbe never mentioned ger. All sources are contrived to follow the consistent view.
predicated on no Ger Toshav until Jubilee. Gemara Arachin 29a speaks about all Ger Toshav. There is only one kind of Gentile, a Noahide Gentile keeps the 7 laws. A Noahide who wants more than 7 laws is encouraged to convert to Judaism, and the other Shita implies that the Ger Toshav status is mandatory, thus problematic. The conclusion of Vishav HaKohen. That's the basic understanding. I would say that is, he has outlined the basic misunderstanding of most Jews who haven't looked into the matter. But I think already this is becoming outdated. I mean, when was this book published? Let's have a look, because I think already there are plenty of Jews who are not thinking like that anymore. Now, this was published in 2017, copyright 2017 by David Katz. So I think things are moving quite quickly. I haven't come across any Jews who think like that recently. That was the case certainly back in 2000. But I don't think I've found many people who think like that recently. I think they're all much more savvy. So things are changing. Good. But nevertheless, he lists that's the situation. Granted, the neo-Noahide post-Rebbe path is safe, non-threatening theoretical position, but it cannot be taken seriously nor trusted. It is outside the tradition, and it only came into existence through forgery and exploitation of the most crucial aspects of Halakha of the Rambam. You know what? I get the feeling he's writing this book for someone or to somebody who has been arguing with him, but I don't understand what the argument's about. You know, it's like, well, there's clearly he's responding to someone. This is a responser of some kind, but I don't follow the argument. I'm not sure what he's protesting about. It's like there's clearly a protest going on here, but I'm not entirely sure what he's protesting about. I mean, maybe the words that he's using are indicating he's protesting about something which I find to be opposite of what he's saying. But nevertheless, I think we'll just have to say he's not a very good communicator. But he's doing all right with summarizing a lot of points. He's just not communicating very well. Perhaps it needs to be edited in the second edition, maybe. The Rebbe and the Rambam, he goes on. The Rebbe explains the Rambam with refreshing clarity, and by the end of the Rebbe's psak, 2 clear paths emerge. One is Noahide, and the other is Ger Toshav. One does not negate the other. Both are valid opinions when in context, and neither come through a compromise of the Rambam's halakha. In fact, the Rebbe elucidates the Rambam in accordance with all rabbis who either wrote on the subject who have come to explain the Rambam, and the Rebbe gives the halakha in harmony. And he says, the following are the fundamental points of the Rambam's halakha in light of the Rebbe, Psak of the Rebbe. The Ger Toshav, the following are the fundamental points from the Rambam's halakha in light of the Rebbe, according to David Katz. He says the Ger Toshav does not imply Jubilee. Well, I would agree, but that's not just the Rebbe. I think I'm getting what he's coming at here. He's trying to say that without the Rebbe, you have no other way of understanding the Toshav, the Ger, except in the way which he's just outlined. So he's saying that only the Rebbe allows you to see things in a different way. And of course, he'll say that because he basically is saying that the Rebbe is there for the Messiah. Therefore, you know, he's brought new light on the topic. But I would say that's contrived. That's forced. What he's about to list right now, I would say, is the standard view. And it's got nothing to do with Rambam and nothing to do with the Rebbe. He goes on to say, though, that this is really only the Rebbe has managed to make this sense with Rambam. And this is all thanks to the Rebbe. All praise and hail and glory to Rebbe Menachem Schneerson, who has proven that he's Messiah with this clarification of how the Ger Toshav situation works. Let's have a look and see what he says. So he says, and these will be points which you've heard me talking about all the time, even though I'm completely not a Chabad. Says that Ger Toshav does not imply Jubilee. Exactly. A Beit Din of 3 men is not mandatory. Possibly not, because I've said, you know, as long as you're believing in the Evangelion, then that will suffice, because you've accepted the authority of the Beit Din, which gave that to the Noahides in the first place. He goes on and says, we should strive to make Noahides. Well, that's been going on from when Jesus of Nazareth said, go and make disciples out of all nations. And he says, when the opportunity arises to make a Ger Chassid, it's an extremely important mitzvah to do so. Absolutely. He says, a Noahide is characterized by one who fulfills the 7 laws with proper intention, correct? A Ger Chassid is characterized not only through fulfilling the 7 laws, but by properly accepting them as well with proper intent. Yes, this acceptance is the acceptance of the yoke of heaven, which is not incumbent on the Noahide. A Noahide is commanded not to serve other gods, while the Ger proactively accepts belief in God. And he goes on to say, a Ger Toshav is one who has taken Kabbalah and is then referred to as a Chassid, for he is careful with the 7 laws, and the Kabbalah is called Ger Toshav, and the aftermath is Chassid, hence Ger Chassid. The Rebbe clearly states, he says, this Ger Toshav is not a type of conversion, and it has very limited use of the term applicable only to the nature of Kabbalah. I disagree. It is a kind of conversion. And he goes on to say, there is no fear of making a new religion. Certainly, there's no fear. This is consistent with the Rebbe's views on the Ger Toshav, see Likutei Sichot, volume 31, Mishpatim. And the Rebbe shows how not only the Rambam held this way, but that this is the accepted shita of known Ger Toshav Sugiyah. There is no other views on how the Sugiyah works or on how it is implemented. Well, that's not true. There are plenty of other views. The Rebbe acknowledges that there are 2 paths, Noahide, where the Ger path is inapplicable for any reason, and the Ger Chassid path, which the Rebbe encouraged, calling it a tremendous mitzvah, one applicable for all time based on opportunity. And the Rebbe states that we don't follow the conclusions of Vashav HaKohen according to Halacha. All right. I think, as I'm saying, it's contrived. I think now I'm starting to see where I think this is coming from. There is some kind of debate. This is a collection of responsa. There's some kind of debate, maybe emails going back and forth between Rabbi Katz and somebody else. And I think they're both Chabadniks. And Rabbi Katz is saying, well, this is what the Rebbe taught. And the other person is saying, no, this is what the Rebbe taught. And I think that with the first page, he's saying this is not what the Rebbe taught, that basically we have to go and convert everybody, and there is no such thing as a Noahide. But that is what Chabads do teach, really. And he's saying, no, that's not what Chabads teach. This is what the Rebbe taught. And he's saying this system, which we just read out here, is the way it should be. And that's probably why Rabbi Katz has been sort of dismissed, disowned, disgraced by other Chabadniks who are saying, no, he doesn't understand what the Rebbe was up to. The Rebbe really was only trying to get us to convert non-Jews into Judaism. But Rabbi Katz has missed the point. And Rabbi Katz is saying, no, that's not what the Rebbe was saying. Rebbe was saying this. I think what's really going on here is that Rabbi Katz has a greater understanding of Judaism in general and is writing his book to try and convince other Chabadniks of this view. Whereas other Chabadniks have probably taken the idea, no, we have to just convert people to Judaism, and Noahide is just a stepping stone to convert people to Judaism. So I think what's going on here is he's collected his responses in emails to other people on the topic, and he's assembled them into the book. So now I'm starting to get a clear idea of where he's coming from. It doesn't really reflect the reality of the situation. Rather, it reflects a conflict which has gone on. So you wouldn't be able to read this work like 100 years from now and understand it as actually describing the reality of the situation. You would definitely need to understand the history of Rabbi Katz, what was going on. You'd have to have a good introduction and how people were, what the controversy was, what the situation over believing Menachem Mashiach and the Messiah was, and the differences of how the different Chabadnik sects were splitting up from each other. You'd have to understand all that in order to understand what is he getting at in this book. But I think it's starting to become clear now. I'm starting to get an idea of where he's going with it. All right, then. So he continues in his response to whoever it is. Key components to Rambam. Number 1, Noahide equals one who fulfills the 7 laws or know with proper intention. Number 2, Chassid, one who not only fulfills the 7 laws, but does so after taking proper Kabbalah. Agreed. I wouldn't say that. I would agree with that's correct what Chassid is. But I would disagree that that's what Rambam says, because Rambam rejected Kabbalah. So really trying to force Kabbalah into Rambam. But that's what the Chabadniks do all the time. So there is that issue there. Number 3, he says, Ger Toshav equals one who accepts properly Kabbalah, the yoke of heaven, as a prerequisite of becoming a Hasid, not to be confused with the Halachic Jubilee Ger Toshav. Fair enough. point 4, Beit Din equals one should stand before 3 Jewish scholars. In this case, it is not imperative, but if performed, it will grant one the honorary title of Ger Toshav, along with Hasid Ger Hasid. Okay, fine, fair enough. But I think his interpretation here is his interpretation of 3 Torah scholars based on the understanding of Havarim, meaning only Jewish scholars, is wrong. I would go with Yeshayahu Hollander on that instead and say, what is a Havarim? What do Havarim mean? It means friends. I no longer call you my disciples, I call you my friends. This is very important for the Messianic Noahide to consider. So now he's going to talk about the standing before 3 scholars aspect. He says, standing before 3 scholars, Talmud Bavli, Yerushalayim Talmud. The mandate to come before 3 scholars, 3 Chavarim, a lesser, more common Beit Din, is sourced in Yerushalmi Talmud. It in conjunction to protecting the sanctity of the land of Israel in the time of the temple. In temple times, after the return from Babylon, the Jewish people needed a secure system to ensure kashrut over all Torah living, especially concerning produce and its relevant laws. The system called for the lesser educated to come before the tribunal of 3 scholars, a magistrate court, upon which they would show scholarship and be deemed reliable, trustworthy. The term for this kashrut is mekablin, which roughly implies on the same page with the scholars. A Ger Toshav at the time of the temple must keep the 7 laws of Noah, go before the tribunal, and come out mekablin. This would ensure that the Ger Toshav, non-Jew, could be entrusted in holy matters that are vital for the Jewish survival when interacting with non-Jews. This is called Yovel Noheg, a standard level of observance that one would be knowledgeable to operate, even in a time of Jubilee, which to function on a Jubilee level, a certain degree of knowledge is mandatory. Thus, the terms Ger Toshav, Yovel, Jubilee, Beit Din, etc. refer to this type of Ger Toshav. It is a Yerushalmi, Jerusalem Talmud concept, and it is mentioned in the Bavli and Babylonian Talmud in select discussions. There are many other instances when the Bavli speaks in Yerushalmi terms. Then it goes on, Avodah Zarah, that means foreign worship. 64b asks, who is a Ger Toshav? And the halacha is expressed as expected. 7 laws stand before 3 scholars, etc. This is the Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud, speaking in Yerushalmi terms, in Jerusalem Talmud terms. The concepts are borrowed. The reason for the borrowing is because the Ger Toshav concept works in Bavli matters. For example, how do I know if a non-Jew can touch a Jewish wine? The halacha is that they can if they are Ger Toshav, and the standard is laid out in the Bavli through borrowing from the Yerushalmi. The outcome is the same. A non-Jew who can be relied upon, trusted people who are quick to point out that we are not in a time of Jubilee, are making a mistake through unawareness of the Ger Toshav sugya. Rambam quotes from Arachin about Ger Toshav only in the time of Jubilee, but says we are not mekablin them. This means that the Yerushalmi level of Ger Toshav is not applicable until the time of Jubilee, but the lesser Bavli version of Ger Toshav isn't only applicable today, it is a major aspect of halacha and the basis of all Jewish interactions with our non-Jewish neighbors. For example, how can you get, if you're a Jew, and this is me helping you understand, if you're a Jew and you want to get some wine, some kosher Jewish wine to do a blessing for Kabbalat Shabbat or for Havdalah, okay, where can you get your wine? Well, you're going to maybe order it online, or you're going to go to a shop, okay? Either way, they're not going to ask you to prove that you're Jewish when you go into the shop and say, wait a second, can you prove you're Jewish before we sell you this wine? Or online, could you upload your Beit Din documents, please, so we can see and check that you're Jewish before we sell you this wine? It's not going to be possible. So what would be the solution? Well, you have to live in a Jewish community where they make their own wine and just share it amongst themselves, and they don't let anybody outsiders touch it. Because non-Jews are not allowed to touch, and non-believers are not allowed to touch Jewish wine. Okay, they're not allowed to purchase Jewish wine. So how are we going to live in society? So the Tosavists say, well, look, they're all Ger Toshav these days. And this is 1,000 years ago, of course. They're all Ger Toshav these days, so it really doesn't matter. We can sell our wine in the marketplace, and if somebody comes along and buys it, we don't have to say, "Excuse me, could you prove you're Jewish before buying this wine, please?" Just accept that we live amongst people who believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that's enough. They might have a slight misunderstanding of how they believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but it's sufficient that they believe in God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and we're supposed to treat them as Ger Toshav. And a Ger Toshav is allowed to buy the wine, so just take your wine to the supermarket, put it on the internet for shopping. Let's just sell the wine, and we'll accept that if they buy it and they're not Jewish, then it's okay because they're all Ger Toshav. So that's basically the problem here. That's where it comes down. It comes down to something like this. Who is allowed to buy certain things like sacramental Jewish wine? So the lenient view is anybody who is a believer in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, any Bible believer, any Jew, any Christian, any Muslim is allowed to buy this. The stringent view is only halakhic Jews. So let's make the rest of the wine meshuval, so that it's like diluted somehow or heated up somehow so that it's not actually totally kosher, but then neither is it totally suitable for blessings. So that's what he's coming down to here when he says it's not only applicable today, but it's the major aspect of halakha and the basis of all Jewish interaction with our non-Jewish neighbors. If they're not Ger Toshav, we're not supposed to be interacting with them. The only thing we can do with them would be basically sell them dead meat which died, like carrion in the field, or go and find, one of our sheep died. Let's sell it to a nachri. That's all we could do, really. It wouldn't be possible. Let's try and make some money out of nachri. You're supposed to, actually, that is, according to the Torah, the sheep which dies of itself in the flock is the portion for the Noahide. It's their portion. It belongs to them by God's decree. But that's too complicated. Let's just make some money out of it instead. Let's sell it and make some money out of non-believers. Then you have to say, well, who's a non-believer? Well, everybody's a non-believer. Then I can sell this meat and make some money out of it rather than giving it as God has decreed as a portion for the Noahides. A Noahide is allowed to take that meat, wash the mutton, and prepare it as a Noahide knows best. But that means you're not making a profit. Better to regard them all as nachrim. Then you can sell, make some money out of it instead. See what I mean? So it's all about whether as Jesus says, you cannot serve God and mammon. You can't serve God and money. You're either going to love one or hate the other, and that's just the way it is. And it's also, but it's kind of strange because you can have no problem putting your wine on the market for anybody if they're all Ger Toshav. Maybe they think the argument is, but you don't get as much profit out of my wine as you do out of meat. So it's better to regard everybody as being non-Jewish and non-Toshav and non-Noahide than it is to try and regard everybody as Noahide. So, but it really comes down to this. The fact of the matter is, the big argument is basically about how much money can I make? And once you start thinking down terms of that, then you can't serve God. You're not serving God. Rambam it can be used either way. I think that Rambam can be used to try and make a bigger profit out of selling things to non-Jews. But Katz is saying the opposite of what I say. So I would say, well, Katz, if your interpretation of Rambam was the correct interpretation of Rambam, then I would say Rambam's fine. But yours is really the minority interpretation of Rambam amongst the Chabadniks. And therefore, that's why you've been kind of cast out of the Chabad circles. They don't like you because you're not following their standard narrative, I think. Anyway, I think he's doing well. God bless him. He's doing to Menachem Schneerson what the Soloveitchiks did to Rambam in the first place. He's trying to rehabilitate him and make him more kosher according to the standard Judaic narrative. But he doesn't want to say that that's what he's doing. Otherwise, people will say, you're not truly one of us in the Chabad circles. Well, they've already rejected him in the Chabad circle. So there you go. So the Rebbe Shita, he says, the Rebbe makes clear not only the path of the Noahide and how to make Noahides, but also the path of the Ger Toshav and the mitzvah of making Gerim. The Rebbe points out that a Ger Toshav singular in the Rambam is different than taking an oath to be a Ger Toshav in plural. Gerim Toshavim plural. The difference is that the former implies the borrowed language concepts for the sake of the oath, and the latter would imply becoming actual Gerim Toshavim as spoken of in the Yerushalmi, which can't take place unless it's the time of Jubilee. In short, the Rambam's usage, context, meaning, copy and paste from Chazal, is uniquely and distinctly different from the Yerushalmi. Ger Toshav in every way. Distinct from the Yerushalmi Ger Toshav in every way. There are simply two types of Ger Toshav at play here. And with deep focus on Ger Toshav, one will actually find not only many types of Ger Toshav, but many types of Gerim as well. Basically, there are very many types of Noahide. The Rebbe taught the Noahide world how to cultivate Noahides, and he also revealed the nuances of Ger Toshav. He's still bigging up the Rebbe as if nobody ever did that beforehand, as if the Baraita on the origin of the New Testament doesn't exist. He advocated and encouraged both. Through the Rebbe, we see one cannot exist without the other. Both are necessary. It's like he really loves the Rebbe, doesn't he? And each is a unique aspect of oral Torah. It should be noted that the Rebbe's Noahide Shita does not contradict the Ger Toshav, for Ger Toshav in the Rambam is not a Yovel, and this does not contradict or complicate the Noahide path. The Noahide and the Ger Toshav are two completely separate entities within the Rambam. The Rambam carries many shitot within this halakha, and this is not unique in the Rambam. Rather, this is the style of the Rambam. So difficult I think it's very difficult for a non-Jew to follow this. It's easy for somebody who's very informed about Judaism to follow this and understand what's going on, but I think this book really is not for non-Jews. I would say this book is for Jews. This is really something for Jews. Now I see there are a few questions coming. I see somebody is actually asking, can I ask a question? Shalom, can I ask a question, Goyim, or do you take questions? I'm not sure. You can ask as many questions in the chat there as you like. Just post away. And this is somebody's come along called Yak here. He's saying, can I ask questions, or do you take questions? Post as many questions as you like. We'll get onto it all later on. So fire away. I won't be reading. I'll be reading from this book instead. All right. So let's carry on then. So he really loves the Rebbe, obviously. Today's Noahide Shita, he says, stands categorically against the Rebbe's Shita of Noahide. I think he's trying to say that people have left the Rebbe's true teachings and that things have changed. I would say that's not the case. What's simply the case is that the Holocaust happened, people became ignorant. Your understanding of what the Rebbe is saying is very unique and different from what other people believe, which is basically just keeping the level of ignorance as it has been. You're indicating to me that Rebbe understood more, and I like your interpretation of Rebbe Menachem Schneerson's view, Rabbi Katz. I think it's great. I'm not entirely convinced because, most people have been telling me opposite from the Chabad circles. But you're here telling me that no, the reason why they've been telling you opposite, Joe, is because things have changed. People have forgotten. The Noahide Shita today is categorically against the Rebbe Shita of Noahide. Well, I could say, all right, then, I don't know. I just can say the majority of Chabadniks seem to be opposite from your position. So I would like to accept Rabbi Katz's position and say that's what the Rebbe was teaching. I'll say, okay, that's fine. But it's still, Rabbi Katz, I have to say to you, you're really trying to put it and say the Rebbe did everything and he was perfect and he solved everything, and you're really trying to ignore what actually happened and existed before World War II. The reality is that the Rebbe didn't solve Judaism. Judaism was plodding along quite happily, fantastically for 1,000 years beforehand. And if what you're saying about the Rebbe's view is true, all it means is that the Rebbe preserved some ideas about that before, as it existed beforehand. But I would say, since you are claiming that that the Rebbe was the one who did it all, is a proof that the Rebbe has done something terribly wrong to you and your mind and your understanding of Judaism, that you think that nobody had any of the answers before the Rebbe came along. So a little bit cultish, I think, a little bit cultish around the cult of Rebbe Menachem Schneerson. Anyway, he says that the Shita stands categorically against the Rebbe's Shita of Noahide, and even worse. It denies Ger Toshav through misrepresenting the Rambam as speaking of Jubilee, and this produces two Shitot in the Noahide world today. One that stands with the Rebbe vis-a-vis the Rambam, which is to say that Noahides can exist or choose to progress into a Ger Hasid, and one that represents a false Noahide, albeit well-intentioned. The major practical difference between the two Shitot is a Noahide only rejects idolatry but may still engage in Shituf. If, in fact, without being a Ger Toshav, they are halakhically akum, are in the category of Shabbos Goy and still considered as worshipping Shituf. The proponents of this Shita are open about the halakhic standing when questioned, however, they conceal it from its adherents. The Ger Toshav Shita stands in direct opposition to these points, and most crucial of all, takes a proactive belief in God, shedding the Shituf label for those who stand attached to Israel. The Ger Toshav Shita understands that the Noahide path must exist, even if it is only a step on the path. However, the Neo-Noahides reject the Ger Toshav Shita. This is interesting. So he's kind of exposing that there is some kind of conflict which goes on behind the scenes. He's saying that most of these people, most of these books, which are being published by organizations which are the non-Messianic Noahide movement, he's saying that they are hiding from the Noahides that really all they want the Noahides to be is Shabbos Goy. That's what he's saying. They only want you to be Shabbos Goyim, and that's the maximum that they expect of you. But they won't say that to you. They'll say it to me, Rabbi Katz, privately, because I'm a rabbi, I'm a Jew. And they're basically, who cares about these goyim? But they won't say it to you, the Noahides, directly. That's interesting. This is quite nice, I think, that he is exposing a kind of a conflict which is going on behind the scenes. And this could be another reason why they hate him. This could be another reason why they are sort of cutting him out, because he is exposing something which is going on here. So that's quite interesting. As we are teaching Noahide Judaism for Messianic Hebrews here, we're outside of all of this. This has got nothing to do with us. We're just interested in the... we just break out the popcorn and sit down munching and saying, interesting. So what's going on here? Okay, so we it's interesting for us to see this as outsiders of this little sort of conflict going on. But it's also there are some things which we can learn from here. Very interesting. Okay, let's carry on. Find my place again. He says the proponents of this shita are open about this halakhic standing when questioned. However, they conceal it from their adherents. The Ger Toshav shita stands in direct opposition on these points, and most crucial of all, takes a proactive belief in God, shedding the Shituf label for those who stand attached to Israel. The Ger Toshav Shita understands that the Noahide path must exist, even if it is only a step on the path. However, the Neo-Noahides reject the Ger Toshav Shita. It should be noted that the fear of the Neo-Noahide Shita is lest the Ger Toshav be guilty of making a new religion. The prohibition of making new religion is a preventative measure to ensure that non-Jews should not establish the new mitzvah. The intention of performing it as a Jew, this would be akin to making an eighth Noahide law, and the penalty of doing so is severe. The Torah example of such behavior is a non-Jew keeping Shabbos like a Jew. You're allowed to keep Shabbos. You have to keep Shabbos, as the Torah says. To the Ger, you have to keep the Shabbos, but not as they do, not as the Jews do, i.e., 39 melachot. You can't do that. If you do that, you're in trouble. The Ger Toshav do, however, keep a lesser Shabbos that sees them perform melacha per force. Their goal is to believe in Hashem and not do melacha for a Jew, to which would be akin to returning to idolatry that they have already rejected. Another example of how you can do this, we have people who would like to put tefillin on their head. They would like to bind tefillin on their arms and their head. I say, don't do it. You're not supposed to do it. But Jews don't do it on Sabbath. Therefore, you can do it on Sabbath, but not any other days of the week, because otherwise somebody might confuse you as a Jew if you're a Noahide. So you can do it on Sabbath, but don't do it any other day of the week.
because the Jews are going to do it the other days of the week, and they're not going to do it on Sabbath. So you have to make a distinction. It's very, very important, sort of concept of bein kodesh lechol, bein Israel le'amim, that you have to distinguish yourself from the Israel. And so you keep the Sabbath, you observe the Sabbath, you've got to do something different from them, significantly different, so that people say, what are you doing? And you say, I'm a Noahide. Oh, okay, fine. That's all totally fine. So you are basically advertising and saying, I'm not one of them. I'm not a Jew. I'm just a Noahide. You've got to make that distinction. And this has all been done already. The Petach Hamon has already done this. When you study the Baraita concerning the origin of the Evangelion, for example, it's all been explained. All right. The Ger Toshav do, however, keep a lesser Shabbos that sees them perform Melacha per force. Their goal is to believe in Hashem and not do Melacha for a Jew, to which would be akin to returning to the idolatry that they have already rejected. Any of you who are not recognized as Jews by the scribes and the Pharisees, but who try to live as Jews and do the laws as Jews, are considered by the halakha to be idolaters. So don't do it. I mean, we had people coming into the group. I remember we had some people from, what's it called? What's his name? Isaac Shapiro's group come with us for a little while and stay. And then I say, no, you can't do this as a Jew. And they don't like it. And eventually, after a while, they leave. And I because I keep on hammering again and again, no Judaization, no Judaization, no Judaizing. And they think that Judaizing, the sin of Judaizing, is something which was invented by Christianity. And they don't realize that, no, actually, it's something which comes from the scribes and the Pharisees. You cannot Judaize and pretend to be a Jew and live as a Jew according to the laws without having gone through a formal conversion by the official authorities. The authorities have to have you as a candidate for conversion and take you through to be a Ger Tzedek. And if you are doing it alone without the correct authorities, you are considered to be an idolater. You are considered to have returned to the idolatry that you used to practice beforehand. And so we've got too many of these people. They're all over the place, and they're calling themselves Jews left, right, and center. We have this wonderful phrase: Jews everywhere, and not a drop to drink. So it comes that comes from the idea of somebody who's stranded in the ocean, water everywhere, and not a drop to drink. You're going to die of thirst because you can't drink the seawater. Likewise, there are Jews everywhere these days. Everywhere there's a Jew, but there's not a drop to drink. Nothing authentic. No authenticity to these people. They're all fakes. They're all scammers. So, so we have this situation, and these scammers are following the doctrine of Gog. They are following the ultimate final antichrist because they are in this path of Judaization. Judaization is really the sin of, also say, the doctrine of Gog. Really, they are worse than the regular idolaters that they were beforehand. At least beforehand, they had an excuse, but now they have no excuse. They should have, if they are studying Judaism, they should know that they shouldn't be allowed to do this. It would be the same as idolatry if they did all this and behaved like Jews. They should know that that's the case. But because where else are they studying how to be Jews? They are coming across these verses and they're saying, no, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. And that's what makes them worse than the kind of idolater they used to be. So it's an absolute idolatry. Judaization is so dangerous. It's not the way. You have to be Noahide. You cannot be practicing as a Jew. But that's what everybody's doing these days. Even Jesus says, they say they do it because they say, I'm following Jesus. I want to do what Jesus did. Jesus says, obey the scribes and the Pharisees. But Jesus says, but don't do what they do. He's saying to his disciples, do what they tell you. And what do they tell you? Be good Noahides. That's what they've always told you. Be good Noahides. Don't do what they don't. Don't Judaize. But they're Judaizing. And that's why we are so opposed to the Messianic Jews on this channel. We say no to Messianic Jews. Stop calling yourself Jews. You're not. If the scribes and the Pharisees don't say you're a Jew, you're not. You are the ones. The Messianic Jews are the ones to whom applies the phrase synagogue of Satan. It's Messianic Jews who are. All right.
He goes on, what is a ger? And this is page 108. In today's world, a ger is a convert. In Chazal's world, a ger carried several meanings: alien, stranger, convert, sojourner, dweller, slave, worker, Baal Teshuvah, Noahide, resident alien, etc. I really don't like his use of the word slaves. It's like God is the God. God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the God who frees you from bondage. He doesn't enslave you. He likes to use the word slave a lot, doesn't he? Really don't like his use of that. Servant, I would say, fine. Worker, good. Sojourner, absolutely. Noahide, perfect. These are the West Winds. I mean, but why does he keep on using the word slave? I don't know. It's very strange. He keeps on talking about this. This sort of attitude is what we totally oppose on this channel. You know, notice the name of the channel these days. This is proto-communism, folks. We're not interested in slavery, all right? Anybody who's translating the Bible as endorsing slavery is a human trafficker. Well, we have to fight against these people and these views. All they're doing is bringing shame upon the whole concept of Abrahamic faith. We've got to update our beliefs a bit. You've got to move on with the times a bit, you know. I mean, at least you have to be consistent with the first commandment. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of bondage. You shall have no other God before me. He's the one who frees you. He's not the one who enslaves you, for goodness sake. Anyway, well, that's my regular sort of gripe with everybody who has that sort of I can call it like a King James version view of the religion, or an Islamist view of the religion, that God somehow endorses human trafficking. Well, you know, if that was the case, I would say, you know, burn these books, burn them all. Human trafficking is no justification for human trafficking. Anybody who thinks that, so I have no problem. I mean, if I heard that, oh well, there was a human trafficker who had been drowned in the sea or shot in the head, I would say good. I wouldn't say that's a pity. How sad. I say good. Shoot them all. Absolutely, get rid of all these human traffickers. Anybody who promotes it. If they said that there were human traffickers who are promoting a verse in the Bible, I would say burn that translation of the Bible. Burn it. Retranslate it properly, because if the human traffickers are justifying themselves as saying, thank God, you know, I made a good profit this year, which was I read in the newspaper this morning. There was a human trafficker who was saying, well, thank God I made a good profit last year. It's like, how can you thank God? Well, because God permits me to sell humans. It says so in the Bible. Then burn your Bible and burn you. You're not worth considering to be equal to humans if you think you can sell humans. You consider yourself over the humans, well, then that makes you definitely under humans, and you need to be dealt with. Either repent, and I'll welcome you as a brother, or burn in hell. I couldn't care less what happens to you. So anyway, he's saying it's got all these meanings. And he says, our poskim called Noahides Gerim, but due to pains of exiles, their number were considerably smaller compared to the number of full-fledged converts over the last 1,000 years. But we were promised that in the end of days, there would be Gerim Grurim, non-Jews who would return to the Torah, even in a time when the Jews are ill-equipped to accept these Gerim. One cannot deny that these times are upon us, certainly agree. And the obvious problems that have arisen out of this are confusion over who or what is a ger. It's a Noahide, it's simple. And we are capable of taking Noahides to the next level. The truth of the matter is, a convert is a Jew, and Gerim have always been a part of our Mesorah. This time is as good as any to not only perform the tremendous mitzvah in making Gerim and facilitating the Noahide path, but to take part in the early days of the Messiah. This has been going on for 2,000 years, mate. If you haven't noticed, good grief, they're very far behind. But never mind. God bless them for everything else. At the very least, assuming we are not in the actual days of the Messiah, we are witnessing a ger return that rivals similar events in our past. Wow, they really seem to not know anything about the God-fearers, you know, the Theosebis, the Sebamenai. Seems like Ben Abrahamson's the only one who really pushes this. God bless Ben. Namely, Purim. Well, God bless Ben for pushing this, because we worked on this together. But our ancestors have always shown us the art of making gerim. Certainly, going back to the gerim that were made by Abraham and Sarah. Yes, one can only wonder if this has happened with the Klal Israel visible return to Zion in our time. I think it's not. He's too eschatological, isn't he? He can't see that this is something which has been going. He doesn't seem to even know about Beni Mosach, for example. He doesn't know about Beni Mosach, so he's clearly really thinking that Messianic Judaism is the Messiah because this is the first time it's happened. It's wonderful. It's amazing. We're finally doing what's supposed to be there. I think it's because he grew up in a family or a background where they didn't have any interest in Noahides. And suddenly he found out about it as an adult, and he thinks this is wonderful. This is one of the signs of the times. And all what it's really a sign of is that finally, Jews are starting to wake up to Judaism again, following the horror of the Holocaust, which has totally, reduced us to the dregs at the bottom of the barrel. And we're starting to recover from that state of utter and absolute ignorance concerning Judaism, gradually starting to learn what our great-grandparents knew. And he thinks that it couldn't possibly be that we lost that much knowledge of Judaism. This has to be a new messianic thing which is happening. Well, I would say to him, sorry, Rabbi Katz, it's just an indication of how little we managed to preserve. And also a massive indication of how little the Sephardim understood and the Mizrahim, how little they understood about real Judaism, that after the massacre of so many Romaniots and Ashkenazim, that they couldn't really keep the truth going because they didn't have enough of the truth in the first place, which is also what Rabbi Shach said when he said that the Sephardim are not ready to lead. He's saying that they're not knowledgeable enough of Judaism yet. This is a big contrast to those Sephardim who are saying that only the Sephardim survived the Holocaust because God loves the Sephardim and he hates the Ashkenazim and the Romaniots. So I'm responding to those Sephardim whenever I take a stab at Sephardic Judaism. Okay, he continues. In conclusion, we stand before two shittot. One is Noahide, Lefei Pshuto, that excludes Ger Toshav, and the other one is Toras Emes, that includes both Noahide and Ger Toshav. This shita is brought down by the Rambam, as explained by the Rebbe and others. The other well-intentioned shita is modern invention, aimed at keeping the Gentiles safely at bay until the Messiah comes and rescues. Although the situation at hand appears to be messianic in nature, in reality it is not. Well, I'm glad you said that. It is a halakhic matter, that's true. And one that has been preserved, let's put that over there, one that has been preserved in halakha for over 2,000 years. While changing the halakha may seem like the safe bet, it is wrong and delays the geula. Quite the contrary. It should go without saying that keeping and promoting the true halakha will only hasten the true redemption. May it quickly be hastened in our days. And then he has an afterword, which says, this is the Rebbe on Bnei Noach and learning Torah based on Likutei Sichos. Now, I'm not sure if I will read through any more Rebbe Menachem Schneerson stuff. So let's have a look. I think I'm not going to do that. Let's see. Well, that really is at the end. After that, it's got appendix and the Ger frequently asked questions and elucidation of terms and lexicon of terms. So this afterwards, and then he's got a lot of other references at the back. I think this book probably is useful for get all the references at the back, which I'm not going to go through. But I might do that in a different show. But he's got the afterwards here. It's just a few pages, and then he's got the appendix. Well, let's read through the afterwards as well, since we've done most of it, and it's 2.5 hours anyway. So the only people who'd be interested in watching this show later will be people who are seriously interested in this book. So for the sake of you guys who are seriously interested in this book, I'm going to read the afterward for you as well. So it says, the Rebbe on Bnei Noach and learning Torah based on Likutei Sichos. The Lubavitcher Rebbe says that we have an obligation of the highest order to help the Bnei Noach fulfill their mitzvot through Talmud Torah. The Rebbe quotes the Rambam concerning the role of Klal Israel that will take place in the days of the Messiah. It is known that the Rebbe said repeatedly that Am Yisrael has entered into these exciting times, and now more than ever, the fruit of the Rebbe's Noahide work is clearly visible and has become part of today's Judaism at large in many capacities. The non-Jews have fulfilled their destiny and are returning to our Holy Torah with the exact prescription about which our oral Torah has spoken for thousands of years. They have accepted their place in oral Torah and are acting according to the strict halakha. I wonder, this was exactly happening 2,000 years ago, of course. And people probably were super excited about it then. And then it was also happening in the 6th century, and it was happening again when the Freemasons first began. It's happening again, with all of these different religions, which all come from Noahide Judaism. And I'm certain that people got excited about it as much as he is excited about it every single time. But in the end, nothing really changes. So I don't think we're going to see much changing here either. He continues, they have accepted their place in the oral Torah and are acting according to strict halakha. The Torah contains a crystal clear tradition that outlines the kosher path for the Torah non-Jew to abide by. The Rebbe highlights this path by showing its relationship to the coming of the Messiah and the Messianic age, and the nature of obligatory cooperation with the invigorated righteous Gentile who has properly rejected his religion, turned away from idols, and has accepted the oral Torah. It's so important to accept the oral Torah through his relationship with the 7 laws of Mount Sinai. This is called a rejection of Shituf, and according to the Rambam, as quoted by the Rebbe, this is the only accepted way a Gentile can be regarded as a true Bnei Noach. I would say I would be a bit more harsh in my definition of Shituf and say it's not simply enough to carry on as a Noahide and oral Torah, and therefore you've automatically rejected Shituf, and therefore you're a Ger Toshav. I would say no, there are kinds of Christian belief which are totally outside of the fold and cannot be regarded as a Ger Toshav if you believe them. It is Shituf if you are a Diophysite. You are in Shituf. So you can be Chochmei Olam, but you're not going to be Hasidei Olam as long as you are caught up in Diophysitism, I would say. Even if you accept everything else about the Old Torah, you're still stuck because you haven't rejected that. Well, Katz is being more welcoming, I think. My understanding here is he's saying, as long as you've accepted the Old Torah, you're no longer guilty of Shituf, he's saying. So you're automatically Ger Toshav, he's saying. I think that's what he's saying. So this is called a rejection of Shituf, and according to Rambam, as quoted by the Rebbe, this is the only accepted way a Gentile can be regarded as a true Bnei Noach. The Rebbe calls this 7 laws Ger Toshav, as they have chosen to make sorry, the Rebbe calls this, why does it say it like that? The Rebbe calls this 7 laws Ger Toshav, as they have chosen to make shayaches to Dinei Israel and Dinei Torah. No, that's not how you read it. Something seems to be wrong. There seems to be a word missing there. I'm not entirely sure. This is called a rejection of Shituf, and according to the Rambam, as quoted by Rebbe, this is the only accepted way a Gentile can be regarded as a true Bnei Noach. The Rebbe calls this 7 laws Ger Toshav, as they have chosen to make shayaches to Dinei Israel and Dinei Torah. That hamis. Okay. Strange use of grammar. He calls the true Bnei Noach a 7 laws Ger Toshav. All right, I get it. All halakhic authorities recognize this distinction and hold that to further use such Bnei Noach as Shabbos Goy carries with it a prohibition weighted as Dorisa. This Ben Noach, even of today, through his shayaches to Dinei Torah, is synonymously attached to Din Ger Toshav in some matters. Though he be a Ben Noach, he also carries responsibility to himself and to Klal Israel as partial Ger Toshav in some matters. A full Ger Toshav only exists in time of Jubilee. See above Odei Israel, Yosef Ben Chai, by Rav Aaron Soloveitchik, where the numerous distinctions and concepts are laid out with clarity and diligence. The Rebbe's Sicha, volume 31, also lays out the exact same subject matter, with a particular interest of clarifying the Ger Toshav of today concerning Hilchot Shabbos based on Christos 9a. The Ger Toshav is commanded to not be a Shabbos goy, while being commanded to totally refrain from performing melacha. Okay. The Rebbe states that the nations returning to our holy faith are accepting their role as prescribed by the Torah of Moses. This is a Chidush Gadol, and he bases this on the quote from Rambam, who refers to the prophet Isaiah, who intimates that the days of Messiah and leading up to it, the entire world will be filled with knowledge of God. The Rebbe explains that Rambam's words entire world should be taken quite literally as entire world, Jew and Gentile, ben Noach. This source material to further elucidate the words of the Rambam, the Rebbe, as a source material, as a source material to further elucidate the words of the Rambam, the Rebbe draws from classic Torah sources, such as in his Likutei Sichos, in order to explain and outline the obligations of the Bnei Torah in the Torah, and for Jews concerning their role in facilitation of the return of Bnei Noach to Torah, according to the Halakha and mainstream Judaism, Dinei Ger Toshav. The Rebbe clearly states that this is part of the process of the complete redemption of the revealing of the Torah of our righteous Messiah. The Rebbe explains that Rambam's Torah, that in this process the Gentiles will return to our faith, the true faith, and to the Torah on their own. This is called Gerim Grurim. Rashi explains why these returnees are called Ger or Gerim, which is consistent with Chazal and the entire Masorah. They mager themselves at a time when Jews are not mekabelim gerim. The only way that this can be achieved and perceived as kosher is if the nations in their return do so in accordance of the 7 laws of Noah, of the Bnei Noach, 7 laws Ger Toshav. Once they enter into the true faith according to the halakhic system of the Masorah employs a strict system that associates properly to the Torah-observant Gentile. Some of the Torah-governed relationships are wine, interest, kashrut, Shabbos, holiday, midos, Tanakh, history, precedent, halakha, terminology, hashkafa, Kabbalah, chesidus, darkei, shalom, derech, eretz, charity, temple, protocol, matters of impurity, understanding the text of commentary, mitzvot, nature of transgression, stumbling block before the blind, Tanakh content, tehillim, etc. All of the above require knowledge of Gentiles in Torah and working with Gentiles in Torah capacity. Okay. The Rebbe finalizes his vision by quoting from the Mary, who shows that the Torah-inspired Bnei Noach who learns Torah is compared to the Kohen Gadol, to which the Rebbe states that this means he wears a type of priestly crown, in that he is to make an occupation of mitzvah Torah, Talmud Torah in the 7 laws Ger Toshav. The Rebbe points out that this is only made possible through the Jew who teaches the Bnei Noach Torah, and whom the Rambam calls a sage of Israel when in this capacity. I suppose that's probably where the Islamic tradition of wearing the turbans comes from as well, because a turban is considered a kind of a priestly crown. And so the Islamic wearing of a turban is showing that you're a kind of a Bnei Noach. That is, you are compared to the Kohen Gadol. So, which is something which not every Jew can do. That's another reason. Why would you convert to Judaism to become a Jew when you can be equal to Kohen Gadol as a Noahide? But if you're a Jew, the only way you're going to become Kohen Gadol is if you're Kohen Gadol. So why would you give up this? Interesting to think about the possibility that that's where the wearing of the turban comes from in Islam, maybe. So the two of them fulfill the knowing of God and help usher in the Messianic era. The Jew will then appropriately wear the higher crown, the crown of Torah. These roles cannot be reversed and are designated to work in this way, the way that clarified by the Rambam, the Rebbe explains. The Jew who properly wears the crown of Torah will draw from the sage of Israel and help usher in the complete redemption of the Torah of the Messiah. And while being kosher, holy Torah light unto the nations, as it says, the nations will recognize the Jewish nation's greatness only through their Torah wisdom, not through their military might of the IDF or anything like that, or the economic success of the modern land of Israel, but only through their Torah wisdom, only through drawing upon what the sages of Israel have got to say, which is also what Rabbi Yeshayahu Hollander says as well, that this is how how we are how the non-Jews are supposed to refer to the Jews is actually to draw upon the sages of Israel, the wisdom of the sages of Israel, the Torah wisdom. That is what Yeshayahu Hollander says Jesus means when he says, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in the seat of Moses and do and observe everything whatsoever they tell you to do. He's saying means draw upon the wisdom. Don't think about the practice. Draw upon the wisdom. Okay. Then the Torah carries a tradition from the sages that Gentiles are destined to leave idolatry, even Shituf, and will embrace the Sinai code with enough fervor that they will embrace the true faith and keep the 7 laws according to Sinai, along with a commitment to the study through the Torah of Moses in the prescribed way. This is the meaning of a Nachri who learns Torah is like a Kohen Gadol. There is a Girsa in Midrash Tanhuma that is the basis of this concept in Halacha, and in place of Nachri employs the appropriate term Ger, who learns Torah is like the Kohen Gadol. I agree. Because if you're learning Torah, it means the Torah for Noahides. Therefore, you are a Ger, you're Noahide, you're no longer Nachri anymore. To this, there are only 2 questions that anyone ever asks. A Goy who learns Torah is Hayav Misa, and therefore, does a Jew have any responsibility towards Gentiles or Gentile neighbors? The Rebbe answers these questions by identifying Gerim Grurim as the subject matter of the Rambam, and describes the process as properly teaching, learning about 7 laws, Ger Toshav, and removes all doubt by illustrating how this is the process of complete redemption, which he calls a Chidush Gadol. In conclusion, the Rebbe has given us a clear path that Jews should walk on through the Mesorah, namely the Talmud and Rishonim, like the Ran, Meiri, and Rambam, as well as highlighting the path that Gentiles will walk on. By adhering to the words, we strengthen our holy Torah and take part of the Messianic era, hastening it with in the days that lead to the complete redemption. The only lingering question that both Jew and Gentile both struggle with is the burning question of where there is a precedent in Torah of the truly righteous Gentile, which is really interesting, actually. The basic concept is usually shrouded by poor English translations that have grown accustomed to translating Ger as convert, when in truth, convert is only a type of Ger. The Torah is filled with many non-convert Gerim, and this is the Ger spoken of at great length throughout the entire Mesorah. We have examples like Antoninus, Jethro, Rachav, and the Rechabites, and the Kenites, and Naaman, to name a few. This type of Torah character is promised to happen again. It is what the Rambam is describing as a messianic process, and we are seeing it begin in our times. In fact, let's just be honest. I mean, he keeps on saying it's beginning. But let's be honest. This was discussed in the Evangelion, in the New Testament, and it's been going on very, very long time indeed. This is the whole reason why Christians are supposed to have the Old Testament. It's actually not the Old Testament story of Israel and the Jews that they're interested in. It's the Old Testament story of all the non-Jews, which the Christian Bible is actually all about. And that's the conclusion with the New Testament as well. It's only because of supersessionism that Christians have lost this point, started to identify as true Israel, and have therefore sort of missed the point of what their Christian Bible was all about. It's all about being Gerim, which is a great pity. I think one of the reasons is because they think, when they think about it started like this. Why did they call themselves Israel? Because Ephraim and Manasseh were non-Jews. Their mother was an Egyptian. Sure, their father was an Israelite, but that means they're non-Jews. They were Noahides, and the equation a lot of the time the Christians have with Christians equaling Ephraim or something like that, or the northern kingdom of Israel. They've lost the point that those northern kingdom of Israel Ephraimites were never Jews. They were Noahides, because their mother, ultimately, she was not Jewish, and neither were they. Of course, many of them did convert to Judaism, but their status was always Gerim. Even David himself, the king, because his great-grandmother was a Moabite, and a Moabite is going to be a Ger forever, is never going to lose the status of Ger. Anybody who descends from a Moabite Ger, a convert, is always going to be a convert, is never going to be considered Israel. So but David himself is a Ger. And all of the kings of Israel and Judah who descend from him are all Gerim. And so this has been, this lack of knowledge of Judaism, this is what happens. You lose the oral Torah, you lose the lack of knowledge of Judaism, you lost the entire understanding of the Bible, and you've lost the entire point of what the Christian Bible is all about. Why were these books selected? Why the book of Maccabees and all of this? Why was it put in there for the Christians? to teach the story of the Noahide. When instead they lost that, they said, well, we're kind of equal to Ephraim and Manasseh, forgetting that Ephraim and Manasseh are not Jews. Therefore, we are Israel, children of Israel, forgetting that not all children of Israel are Jews. And therefore, we are the new Israel, thinking that the new Israel means new Jews. And what they've actually done by thinking that they're new Jews in replacement of the Jews is they've Judaized. That's what happens. And once you're Judaized, you follow the doctrine of Gog. Supersessionism, replacement theology. And you've lost the whole point of the story of being a ger, which, God bless him, Rabbi Katz is trying to push, but he doesn't realize that this is the ancient story. This is how this comes in waves. And hopefully will become more and more. I mean, it takes a while for it to latch on to people's consciousness, because they would rather be center stage with the spotlight, which is what they think, the Bible is all about, the Jews receiving the Torah and being a nation of priests or a kingdom of priests. And they forget about the Holy Goy. The Holy Goy is actually what the story is for the Christian. Don't think for a minute that Holy Goy refers to the Jews. It doesn't. Memlachet Kohanim, that's what the Jews are. The Holy Goy is you, the non-Jew, who attaches yourself to the Memlachet Kohanim. All right, then. So he goes on to say, so they translated this convert, when in the truth, a convert is only one type of ger. The Torah is filled with many non-convert gerim, and this is the ger spoken of in great length in the entire Masorah. We have examples like Antoninus, Jethro, Rachav, and Rechabites, and the Kenites, and Naaman, to name a few. This type of Torah character is promised to Hamilton again. It is what the Rambam is describing as the Messianic process, and we are seeing it begin in our times. The Rebbe saw it and brought it out, and we are witnessing an even stronger exodus of Gentiles leaving their fallen faith and returning to the true Torah faith, and in accordance with the Halacha and Torah Moshe, which he certainly means he wants all of those people to leave behind, ultimately, all vestiges of Christian faith, and accept that Menachem Schneerson is the one true Messiah. That's what he's basically getting at, Rabbi Katz here. Even if it's one from a city and two from a family, we are witnessing and participating in the process that Rabbi calls a Kiddush Gadol. And the Torah has contained this wisdom from Sinai, anticipating a fateful time when the Gentiles would return as Gerim Grurim, B'nai Noach, who wish to keep the 7 laws of Ger Toshav and in order to become the Nilveh Ger to go to Israel. We are Nilveh Ger is a reference to Isaiah 14 verse 1 and Isaiah 56 verse 3. We are in exciting times, and this is not disputed. It's the Chiddush Gadol, a time to be a light unto nations, and with that comes the crown of Torah and the wisdom to know God. As the Rambam points out, and as the Rebbe clarifies, it's our job as the Jewish people to bring knowledge of God to the entire world, and this will elevate B'nai Noach into the best Ger Toshavim that they can be, and they will be allowed to perform the 7 mitzvot in such a way that they can occupy themselves with the Torah study embedded in the 7 laws of Noah, of the Ger Toshav, and what has been kept as a Chiddush Gadol will become light unto nations, and what the Rebbe has been teaching has come to fruition. And the rest is just appendix and frequently asked questions and a lot of nice references there. Okay, so there you go. That's the book. So what do I think? He seems to really only know about Menachem Schneerson and Rambam, doesn't he? He doesn't really seem to have much else to say, which is pretty much the case with most Chabadniks. I would say most Chabadniks, not all, Baruch Hashem, but most Chabadniks are a bit like that. So that's basically what we get out of this. It's called the laws of the Ger Toshav, but in reality, it should probably be the laws of the Ger Toshav according to Rambam and Menachem Schneerson, probably, even though he makes a reference to a few other things. That's basically it. I just see a comment here from Yak at the bottom saying, no Nachman Meumann. Yeah, it looks like he did mention a little bit, but it's not his main point. It's not his real point, is it? All right, then. So that's all we've got to say. Let's remove that from the screen, and I'll just close the blind because the sun is in my eyes and I can't really see what is on the screen very well. So I just have to pull the blind down
Give me a few seconds, please. Right, okay. Very bright day. There are some comments still coming through. And I'll see what we've got here now. I just wondered to myself, I'm wondering if Yak is Jewish, and remind you, this channel is not for Jews, you naughty Jew. You're not allowed to be watching this channel. This channel is for Noahides. So if you are a Jew, please leave. Nevertheless, if anybody wants to join me in the studio, here's the link, and we can have a chit chat. Let's have a look. I'll be going off soon, so don't be too shy. If you want to come in and join without going on to speak, we'll be ending the stream. You can have a little chit chat with me afterwards, after we've finished the live broadcast. So we have a shalom from Orthodox Moor. Shalom, you've been busy in the last 24 hours, 3 videos. Yes, sometimes it comes like that. I haven't heard anything from you for a while, Orthodox Moor. Please do check your WhatsApp, because it seems like you're not checking WhatsApp. Now we have a comment from Hitesh. It says, "Oh, thank God for his grace, for Christ has saved me. I'm under the jurisdiction of Judaism. Baruch Hashem. More grace for us who believe in Christ than a simple Ben Noach." There is indeed, because you have Noahide Judaism. And we have also Faznab saying, "Shalom, Joe, excellent. Thank you." Yak has got some questions, and let's see. Let's see. This is the question: is it blasphemy? I wish I could make this bigger somehow, because my eyes are suffering. Is it blasphemy to learn about Yeshua HaMashiach, and did he do the Levitical traditions? It's not blasphemy to learn about Yeshua Sar HaPanim and to understand that Yeshua Sar HaPanim is the Mashiach. That's absolutely basic Judaism. Everybody should learn this. Did he do the Levitical traditions? No, he didn't do the Levitical traditions. He wasn't a Levite. So Levitical traditions are only for Levites. We've got a lot of questions here. And Yak is saying here, King David's brother Jesse is my forefather. So he's claiming to be of from one of the scions from the root of the stump of Jesse. Might have no offense here, Yak, but we get a lot of nut jobs pop along, and you might be one of them. So I'm not entirely sure, but I'll go through your comments probably. If I find some useful questions, I'll go through them. Sorry, no offense. Just to let you know that we do get a lot of nut jobs in the chat every now and then, attention seekers and all sorts. So he says, let's see if there's something which is relevant, which can be useful for Noahides. What do you think about misconception that you have Jewish and well knit? Strictly true, because the Torah says the Father we trace. This is one. I'm not really sure if I can understand what he's getting at. What do you think about this misconception that you're Jewish through your mother? Well, not strictly true, because in Torah it says the father, we trace the tribe. So again, a Jew isn't really a Jew. No, you are only Jewish from your mother, or whether you've made a full conversion under the Jewish authorities. If you claim to be Jewish just because your father is Jewish, you're what we call Amaleki. Amalekites are people who are what we call the Erev Rav, who claim a Jewish status. They are the ones who cause all the trouble in Judaism, again and again and again. Very, very big issue, very major problem. And so you are only Jewish from your mother, or by a full conversion to Judaism under the authority of the scribes and the Pharisees. Let's see if there's anything else which is useful. So I guess this guy's a Muslim. Who's saying that he's Jewish because his DNA says so. Let's try this one. He says, I'm a direct descendant. No, I'm the Jewish genealogy databases. Yeah, probably a Muslim. And basing his Jewishness on the fact he's got some kind of Jewish DNA. This is very common, Yak. I'm sorry to put you down this way. You've got the link there. You can click on it and come and join me in studio if you want to dispute that. But without talking to you, I'm just going to assume you're one of those people who pop along every now and saying this. And I have to slap down. You're not Jewish just because you happen to have some Jewish DNA or Jewish paternal haplogroup or something like that. You're certainly not Jewish. You're only Jewish if the scribes and the Pharisees say you are. If the scribes and the Pharisees have given you your certificate, then you're Jewish. If they haven't, don't even try to claim it, because by doing so, you put yourself. You actually Erev Rav if you have a Jewish ancestor, but you're not recognized by the scribes and Pharisees. You are Erev Rav, and by claiming Jewish status without the authority of the scribes and Pharisees, you put yourself into what's called the Amaleki condition. This is a very, very dangerous condition. This is all to do with the doctrine of Gog. If you want to know more about it, click like and subscribe and get involved. I'm very happy to talk with you about all of your questions. If you click on the link one more time in the studio there, anybody else wants to join, click on it and join me backstage. We'll have a chit chat now. I'll hang around for about 5 to 10 minutes to see if anybody does click on that link. And if you do, we'll talk. And if you don't click in time, then I've gone and you've lost your chance. So God bless you all. Hope you enjoyed the review of the book. Take care and shalom. Bye-bye.